Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Eve Stratford. Eve Stratford was born on December 28, 1953 in Dortmund, West Germany, to parents Albert and Liza Stratford. Her mother was German, while her father was a British doctor who met in the 194 Eros. The family traveled the world, eventually settling in Aldershot, a small town in southeast England. Her younger brother was also born there. During her childhood, Eve won 3 beauty contests and dreamed of becoming a model who would feature on a popular magazine cover. In 1972, at the age of 18, Eve met Tony Priest, a young musician and lead singer of a band called Onyx. They believed that moving to London would boost their chances of success. In 1973, Eve, Tony, and 3 other band members relocated to Leighton in East London. They rented a 4-bedroom flat and lived together. Due to their limited finances, they struggled to make ends meet and slept on old mattresses on the floor instead of beds. Eve Stratford had the ambition to succeed in the modeling industry. Shortly after moving to London, she found a job at the Playboy Club in Park Lane, thanks to a friend's recommendation. She quickly became popular with the club's wealthy clientele, which included millionaires, politicians, celebrities, and even individuals in the criminal underworld. She also became a favorite of the club's owner, Victor Oberlands. All the waitresses at the club wore velvet and bow ties to serve the most prestigious guests in London. At work, Eve introduced herself as Eve Von Bach or Eve Bunny. She proudly shared photos of herself with comedians Eric Morecambe and Sid James, as well as a photo with boxing champion John Conti. She mailed these photos to her parents and felt proud of herself, but she always dreamed of more. In 1975, at the age of 21, Eve applied to be a Playboy cover model, but was rejected. However, fortune smiled upon her when she received an invitation to pose for the cover of Mayfair, Playboy's British rival. Adopting the pseudonym Eve Von Bach, she appeared topless on the cover, and inside the magazine there were 9 pages of interviews with her, along with a large poster of her completely naked. The March 1975 issue of Mayfair sold 460,000 copies, mostly to men. They called Eve the classic blonde. In a 9-page interview, she shared her preferences in love, admitting that she liked being submissive to a strict man. However, she stressed that she did not like being tied down or punished. She enjoyed seducing men and watching their excitement. She admitted that she often flirted and teased men, which made her feel happy. She also said that she liked both men and women. In the interview, she misled readers by saying that she lived alone with a cat, which sometimes made her feel sad and lonely. The nude photo shoot made Eve's boss, Victor Oberlands, very angry. He suspended her from her job as a waitress for 3 months, but she was not too worried about this. She was aware that she had violated her contract by working for Playboy's competitors. In a discussion with her manager, Aaron Morris, she confessed that her dream was to become a model and that she was doing everything she could to achieve that goal. She said that she did not want to serve rich men forever and was not afraid of losing her job as a waitress at the Playboy Club. She hoped that her appearance on the cover of Mayfair would lead to new job opportunities and help her advance her career. She believed that in the next 3 months, she would not need to return to the Playboy Club. Eve had no idea what was coming next. By then, her boyfriend, Tony's band, had completely disbanded. Although after moving to London, the group has performed as an opening act for famous bands such as Queen and T-Rex. But then, Tony and a friend, a former band member, had to work as forklift drivers. The other 2 members joined another band and left them. After Eve was suspended from her job, she spent the day in their rented apartment. Soon, she received 2 job offers, one for a photo shoot with a South African magazine and another as a model for a crime fiction magazine cover, in which she played a victim with a knife stuck in her throat. On Tuesday, March 18, 1975, Eve met with her manager. Then she visited a company that promoted stars on the BS Waters show. At 15:50, she returned home by subway. On the way, she stopped at a flower shop and bought a bunch of dried flowers wrapped in a plastic bag. She arrived home around 4:10 p.m. About 20 minutes later, the neighbor downstairs heard a man and a woman talking in her apartment, and their conversation seemed calm. About an hour later, at 5:15 p.m., the downstairs neighbor suddenly heard a loud noise. She thought someone might have dropped a chair. Then she heard the sound of someone leaving Eve's apartment and coming down the stairs. Just 10 minutes later, Eve's boyfriend, Tony, returned home with a friend and discovered a horrifying scene. His girlfriend, Eve Stratford, was lying on a mattress in the bedroom. Her throat had been cut so deeply that her head was nearly severed from her body. Her hands were bound behind her with a scarf, and her ankles were tied with stockings. She was wearing a pink bra, panties, and a blue nylon housecoat that was open in the front. Tony immediately called the police. The officers and detectives who arrived described it as one of the most gruesome scenes they had ever encountered. Upon examining the apartment, they found no signs of forced entry, indicating that Eve had likely let her attacker in. There were no signs of a struggle, and everything was in its usual place. The crime scene was filled with a disturbing, overpowering smell. Forensic experts later determined that she had been stabbed between 8 to 12 times in the neck. Additionally, they found semen from a strange man on her body. Police thoroughly searched the area around the house, including gardens, garbage bins, and drains, looking for evidence, but they did not find the murder weapon. The only thing they found was a torn magazine lying on the grass, with a picture of Eve on the cover. Detectives believe that the killer saw her picture in the magazine, found her address, and followed her to commit the terrible acts. Witnesses confirmed that Eve was walking alone from the metro station to her apartment, with the last person to see her being a neighbor. She was wearing a small hat and carrying a bag of dried flowers. The bouquet was found inside the apartment near the front door. There were drops of blood on the bag, proving that she had encountered the killer shortly after entering the house. Investigators noted that the dried flowers matched those in Eve's magazine photos. They also considered the possibility that the killer was a secret lover of Eva's, whom she had invited to her apartment. However, they considered this unlikely, as she knew that her boyfriend Tony could come home at any time. Based on witness accounts, a composite sketch of the suspect was created. Several people reported seeing an unknown man near her house. Witnesses described him as being between 30 and 40 years old, of average height, with a limp and a flushed face. One witness also said that the man had thick, curly black hair. Detectives interviewed 2 well-known celebrities who frequently interacted with Eve at the club. Their identities were not released, and there was no evidence to suggest they were involved in the crime. Waitresses from the club where Eve worked were also questioned, with some reporting receiving indecent phone calls the day before the tragedy. On the day of Eve's death, she received 3 mysterious phone calls. Each time she answered, there was silence on the other end, and then the call was disconnected. She had previously told friends that she felt she was being followed by a strange man near her home. She knew nothing about him, but remembered that his gait was tense and awkward. After the tragedy, Mayfair editor David Brenner refused to speak to the police. He only answered their questions by phone and claimed that he had never met Eve in person. Another individual involved in the case was Lebanese businessman Abdullah Kawaj, who dined at the Playboy Club daily. He had feelings for Eve and referred to her as his girlfriend. It is reported that they had a very close relationship, and that Abdullah was involved in the criminal world. A waitress said that when she informed Abdullah of Eve's death, he cried at the table. He became one of the suspects, and this made him feel uncomfortable because people around him had discovered his secret relationship with Eve. A few months after Eve's murder, a man reported to the police that he had rented a flat to two people. When they moved out and he began cleaning, he found a newspaper clipping about Eve's murder in the closet. The clipping was stained with a woman's lipstick. He also found a photograph of Eve stabbed in several places with needles. Unfortunately, the evidence collected did not help the police solve the case. The murder weapon was never found, and as time passed, the likelihood of finding and punishing the perpetrator diminished. Eve's murder attracted a great deal of media attention. Londoners mourned her death, but there were also those who believed that she deserved it because of her promiscuous lifestyle. Some even showed their disdain by vandalizing her grave multiple times. Eve's parents were harassed with obscene phone calls, leading to a nervous breakdown for her mother, Liza. Meanwhile, on September 3, 1975, another girl, Lynn, was murdered in a different part of London. She was only 16 years old when the incident occurred. She was attacked from behind with a hard object to the head and then sexually assaulted. She was born on November 11, 1958. She was a good, diligent girl who had just graduated from high school and was planning to go to college to become a secretary. She was fluent in English, German, and French. On September 3, Lynn was returning home from a cafe where she had spent time with friends. She said goodbye to them around 11:00 p.m. and decided to take a shortcut through a dark alley. She had previously stated that she would never go into that area at night because she knew there were many homeless people there. However, that night, she decided to take a shortcut through that alley. Around 11:20 p.m., as she walked through the alley, she was struck on the head with a heavy object, likely a metal pipe, which resulted in a fractured skull. The attacker then threw her body over a fence into the grounds of an electrical substation to avoid detection. He assaulted she and left, leaving behind traces of his DNA on her body. The next morning, a local security officer discovered Lynn just a few minutes' walk from her home. When the scene was searched, no murder weapon was found. Despite her severe injuries, she was still alive but unconscious. She was rushed to the hospital, but unfortunately, she died a week later. The police quickly launched an investigation and discovered a witness who was walking his dog around the time Lynn was attacked. He reported seeing a white man in the dark alley. Another witness mentioned seeing a man running through the alley. Although they all described the same individual, police were unable to find a suspect. Initially, police believed she was attacked by a friend of European origin. However, upon further investigation, they discovered that it was likely that her attacker had been stalking and lying in wait for her for several hours before carrying out the attack. Despite extensive investigation, police have not found any significant clues, and the case remains unsolved. On September 9, 1977, nearly 2 years after Lynn's death, another murder took place. 27 years old Elizabeth Paravincina was killed just 1.5 kilometers from where Lynn was attacked. Police immediately suspected that the two cases were related. Like Lynn, Elizabeth was walking home late at night on the same street, but in a slightly different direction. She was almost home when she was suddenly attacked from behind with a blunt object. He then dragged her body into the bushes. However, there were no signs of a struggle on her body. Police suspected that the perpetrator panicked about something, causing him to run away without leaving a trace. Witnesses reported a strange man in the area, and a composite sketch was created. But this did not help solve the case. Over time, several more crimes occurred with no suspects identified. Despite attempts to link the cases, only a few common features were found. By 2004, With the advancement of science and DNA testing, Eve's case was linked to Lynn's. The DNA from sperm found in both victims was identical, indicating they were attacked by the same man, 6 months apart. Police now believe that both murders were committed by a serial killer who remains at large because his DNA is not in prison databases. The investigations into the cases of Eve and Lynn have been reopened. Police collected DNA samples from all suspects, including those who are deceased. For example, Abdullah's DNA was taken through his son, but no match was found. In 2015, on the 40th anniversary of Eve's murder, police appeared on television appealing for information and offering a $50,000 reward for information that could lead to the capture of her killer. Crucially, prior to 1995, DNA was not collected from people who had been in prison. This means that the perpetrator may have been arrested and imprisoned for other crimes before. It is possible that he shared information about his crimes with someone. Police have sought information from psychiatrists, inmates, and prison guards regarding the girls' murders. In 2020, former officer Chris Clark claimed that serial killer Peter Sutcliffe was responsible for at least 30 additional cold cases, including Eve's murder. In an exclusive interview shortly after Peter's death, Chris stated that while reviewing information on Peter's cases, he noticed many similarities in methods and motives. Peter was convicted in 1981 for 13 murders and 7 attempted murders. Before his arrest, he was married and worked as a truck driver, frequently traveling across England. It was discovered that he had been in the vicinity of Eve's home for a relative's wedding. The wedding took place on Saturday, March 22, 1975, just 4 days after Eve was murdered. At that time, Peter was 29 years old. Peter was in London during the week Lynn was killed. He was staying in a house in North London, about 6.5 kilometers from the site of Lynn's attack. Peter died in 2020 at the age of 74. Unfortunately, the police were unable to collect a full blood sample before his death. Currently, the national database only has swabs from his mouth and hair. His records indicate he is likely responsible for multiple attacks on women from 1969 to the 1980s. Aside from the 20 proven cases, the remaining cases are just police speculation. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Amy Widener. Amy Widener was born in 1973 into a large family. She has an older brother, John Paul, who is 1 year older than her, and 2 younger sisters, Tiny and Cassie, who are 1 and 4 years younger. Their mother, Gloria Widener, raised the children alone after divorcing her father, who was absent from their lives. The family lived in a house in Indianapolis. Amy often acted as her mother's maid, taking on responsibilities such as cooking, cleaning, and caring for her younger sisters. A diligent student, Amy aspired to become a teacher and was known for her bright, cheerful personality and charming smile. At the age of 14, Amy's life changed dramatically when she became pregnant. She was afraid to tell her mother and tried to hide her growing belly by wearing loose clothing. For more than 5 months, her family did not realize she was pregnant. However, as she approached her 6th month, keeping the secret became more difficult. Amy finally found the courage to tell her mother. She burst into tears and said, "Mommy, I don't want you to hate me." Her mother, Gloria, was shocked but held her daughter close, comforting her despite feeling overwhelmed and uncertain about the future. "I was so shocked, I couldn't believe it. I thought it was the worst thing that could have happened to me." Amy Widener's child was born to Tony Abercrombie, a 20-year-old friend of her brother. Their relationship was kept secret and no one in the family knew about their intimate relationship. When Amy's mother, Gloria, learned of her daughter's pregnancy, she took immediate action. She banned all contact between Amy and Tony and ordered Amy to completely cut ties with the father of her unborn child, setting strict rules for her future relationships. On October 25, 1987, Amy became a mother when she gave birth to her daughter Emily. Remarkably, just 6 days later, Amy returned to school, balancing her motherhood and academic responsibilities. Gloria Widener understood the importance of education to Amy's future and was always supportive and caring to help Amy with her studies. She also recognized Amy's need for a normal teenage life and time with her friends. Despite the challenges of motherhood, Amy was determined to study, receiving praise from her teachers for her hard work and dedication. Amy's family adapted well to having Emily in their lives and shared the responsibility of caring for her. Over time, things seemed to improve, especially for Amy, who was overcoming her challenges. Just when they felt stable, things took an unexpected turn. On November 13, 1989, 16-year-old Amy Widener woke up with a severe sore throat and decided to stay home from school with her 2-year-old daughter Emily. When her mother, Gloria, offered to take Emily to a babysitter, Amy decided to keep her daughter with her. After the family had breakfast, they parted ways for the day. Gloria went to work, while Amy's siblings went to school, leaving Amy and Emily at home. When Gloria could not reach Amy by phone at 9:30 a.m. and several hours later, she became concerned. She asked a neighbor to check on them. The neighbor reported that the house was quiet and unresponsive, prompting Gloria to leave work and rush home. When she arrived, she found Emily sitting on the stairs and called Amy, but there was no answer. Gloria entered Amy's bedroom. The situation in Amy's bedroom was both tragic and shocking. Amy was found dead and naked on the bed, with a lot of blood around her. Gloria called 911 in a panic. When the police arrived, they conducted a thorough search of Amy's house. At first, they suspected a break-in. They found that several stereo devices and a graphic equalizer, owned by Amy's brother, John Paul, were missing. Additionally, a piggy bank in Amy's room, a glass jar containing about $50 for school, was also missing. There was no sign of forced entry. The perpetrator may have entered through an unlocked back door or front door, or it was likely that Amy herself opened it. Key evidence was found in Amy's room: a bloody handprint on the wall and several hairs, both from her body and head, that were likely from her attacker. The medical examiner determined that Amy Widener had been hit in the head with a sharp object, sexually assaulted, and finally strangled. It is disturbing to think that Amy's 2-year-old daughter, Emily, may have witnessed these tragic events. Fortunately, she was found safe and unharmed. The police realized that Emily, although only 2 years old, might have valuable information. To help her feel comfortable, they used finger puppets while gently asking her questions about what she remembered. During this interaction, Emily, who was active in the room, only said that her mother seemed very angry that day. To collect evidence, the police collected the attacker's bloody fingerprints. They also collected the victim's clothes and bed linens from the crime scene to assist in the investigation of this tragic event. During the investigation of Amy's case, the police conducted inquiries among family, friends, and nearby residents. John Paul, Amy's 17-year-old brother, was also questioned by the police. However, he had a credible alibi and no evidence linked him to the incident. Tony Abier, Amy's ex-boyfriend and Emily's father, was also questioned. He expressed his deep love for Amy and denied any intention to harm her, and provided a strong alibi for the day of the murder. Police also investigated Troy Jackson, who lived next door to Amy and knew about a stereo system that had been stolen on the day of the murder. Troy denied any involvement and had no visible injuries. He provided hair samples that did not match those found at the crime scene and was cleared of suspicion after passing a polygraph test. In addition to the 3 main witnesses, police also spoke to Amy's other friends, neighbors, and classmates. They collected fingerprints and hair samples from all of them, but none of them were considered suspicious. Amy Widener's funeral, which took place shortly after her death, drew large crowds to pay their respects. Her passing had a profound impact on the community. Police were present at the funeral, discreetly observing attendees as part of their investigation. One particularly touching moment was the display of a beloved photograph of Amy, in which she wore her favorite white floral turtleneck. It was in this precious garment that Amy, a young girl whose life ended too soon, was laid to rest. After the tragic loss, Amy's family still held out hope that her killer would be caught and brought to justice. However, as the days passed, weeks and months passed, no suspects emerged. After Amy's death, Gloria Widener took in her niece Emily, taking on the role of her mother. The grief and fear weighed heavily on Gloria, as she was constantly haunted by thoughts of the killer and worried about her family's safety. She never left her daughter home alone and lived in a constant state of anxiety as the attacker remained at large. Although Gloria considered moving to a safer home, financial constraints left them with no choice, forcing them to endure these difficult times in their current home. Amy's friends were also deeply affected by the tragedy, fearing that they could be the criminal's next target. They asked their parents to guard the house, even boarded up the windows to prevent a similar incident. One day, Gloria returned home, expecting to find her younger daughters home from school. Instead, she found only eerie silence. The house was strangely empty. She saw the girls' outdoor shoes in their usual place, which worried her. With each step upstairs, her mind raced with terrifying thoughts of what could have happened. By the time she reached the bedroom door, Gloria braced herself for the worst. When she entered the bedroom, she was relieved to find her daughters asleep. As time passed, Amy's daughter, Emily, grew up without the burden of memories of the tragic events involving her biological mother. She had no recollection of the police interviews or being told about her mother's death. However, the police would occasionally return to check on Amy's family, inadvertently reminding them of the pain of that terrible day. Gloria revealed that, at some point, the constant reminders of the past became too much for her to bear. All she wanted was for the police to stop reopening old wounds and for her family to find peace, because nothing could bring Amy back. 13 years after Amy Widener was murdered in 2002, something unexpected happened. The Indianapolis Police Department received a call from a 29-year-old man who claimed he had a dream in which Amy spoke to him about her death. He shared some details about the murder, but most of what he said had already been reported in the newspaper. The police investigated the man, who was 16 at the time and lived across the street from Amy. They ran his fingerprints and DNA to see if he had any connection to the case, but found no matches, so he was released. Although his call did not provide any new evidence, it did lead police back to the cold case. In 2002, they reconnected with some of Amy's friends and acquaintances, especially those who had been in legal trouble over the years. However, despite these new efforts, the investigation hit a dead end again, leaving the case unsolved. In 2011, a Facebook group called Remembering Amy was created by Amy's friends, which sparked interest in her unsolved murder. The police officer working the cold case was unfamiliar with Facebook, so he asked his colleague, Officer Bill Carter, to print out information from the group. This assignment piqued Bill's interest in the case. Although his background was in non-homicide crimes, he felt motivated to review Amy's murder case file in his spare time. Bill thoroughly examined the case, which was more than 20 years old. He reviewed every detail in the file, reassessed the evidence, checked school attendance records from the day of the murder, and analyzed Amy's funeral attendance list. He entered the case information into a database and discovered leads that had been overlooked, including several friends of Amy's brother who had never been interviewed by police and whose DNA had not been collected. In an effort to find new leads, Bill contacted Amy's family and friends in 2011 to collect the names of people who might have information about the case. Bill began collecting DNA samples from people who had been overlooked in the original investigation in 1989. After the murder, police surveyed the neighborhood where Amy lived and recorded the names of residents. Bill returned to these records and the area to check to see if any residents were still living at their original addresses. His investigation led him to a woman who lived across the street from the murder scene and was a neighbor and friend of Amy's. She struggled to recall the names of the boys Amy had befriended. While she recalled most of the names that had already been identified and investigated, she also mentioned a name that Bill had never heard before, Rodney Dink. In 2012, Bill received permission from the Cold Case Unit to officially investigate the Amy Widener case. His first task was to find Rodney Dink to determine if he was a suspect. Amy's family knew Rodney well because he was friends with Amy's brother, John Paul. They often spent time together biking and fishing. When Bill asked John Paul about Rodney, he described him as a quiet, mostly private person who had never aroused suspicion. Bill then went to the home of Rodney Dink, 40, who lived with his mother near Amy's family. Rodney worked at an auto parts store and had been divorced for some time. He had an adult son with whom he had little contact. When Bill arrived at Rodney's home, his mother answered the door and told him that Rodney was at work. Bill left his business card, asking Rodney to call him when he got home. That evening, Rodney called Bill, who quickly arranged a meeting to discuss Amy's murder case. Rodney agreed to meet and invited Bill to his home. However, when Bill returned to Rodney's home, Rodney was missing. Bill looked into Rodney's criminal history and discovered he had been convicted of assault in 1991 and burglary in 1997. Rodney's fingerprints were in the database, so they compared them to the fingerprints found at Amy's house. The purpose of the comparison was to either link or clear Rodney of the crime. The results showed that Rodney's fingerprints matched the bloody fingerprints at the crime scene. After 23 years, a suspect was identified, but Rodney disappeared from the house, leading to a search for him. The investigation took a turn when Rodney's credit card activity showed that he had rented a car equipped with an OnStar tracking system. The police tracked the car to Indianapolis, where Rodney was hiding at a friend's house. When confronted by the police, Rodney threatened them with a knife, claiming his innocence. In the ensuing chaos, he injured himself and attempted to attack police, but was eventually subdued with a taser, handcuffed and taken to hospital. During a 2-day police interrogation that was filmed, Rodney admitted to killing Amy. He said he intended to break into the house and had not expected Amy to come home because she was sick. Rodney described how he entered through a sliding glass door and was surprised by Amy, who attacked him, causing him to panic. In his haste, he picked up the nearest object and hit her in the head, tragically killing her. Over the course of 2 days, he spoke of his vague memories of that day, explaining that it had been 23 years since the murder. His description of the events was vague. At one point, he mentioned going to Amy's house with someone he called Bag. However, Rodney struggled to recall specific details about this friend, including his appearance. He said that Bag waited outside Amy's house before going inside, where the two confronted Amy. When asked about Emily, Rodney said that he did not see her during the incident and was unaware of her presence or crying, not realizing that Emily had been nearby throughout the entire incident. During questioning, Rodney remained calm and respectful, showing none of the typical signs of a murderer. Due to the time that had passed since the crime, his DNA was collected and, as expected, matched semen found on Amy's bedsheets and blankets in 1989. In a rare moment of honesty, Rodney told police, "I always tried to be a good person, but I guess deep down inside I'm not." Both fingerprints and semen at the crime scene were confirmed to be his, and there was no evidence that anyone else was involved. Rodney's confession shocked Amy's family. The quiet and unassuming man was also a close friend and classmate of Amy's brother, John Paul, who lived across the street and frequently visited their home. With the horrific crime he had committed. In a surprising twist, Rodney even attended Amy's funeral, grieving with the others and sending condolences to Gloria Widener. Police Bill later found Rodney's name in the funeral book from the funeral. It wasn't until he reviewed the case that he remembered Rodney being mentioned in 2003 by Tony Abercrombie, Amy's ex-boyfriend and Emily's biological father, who noted Rodney's frequent visits to Amy's family. Bill believes that in 1989, Rodney was never considered a suspect or questioned at the time. While investigating Rodney's past in 2012, police discovered another disturbing fact: Rodney's biological son, Dylan Dink, had been imprisoned for a crime committed in 2009. At the age of 16, Dylan killed his mother, Mary McHenry, after claiming that he acted in response to her abuse and insults. He used a baseball bat to inflict the fatal wounds. Tragically, Mary died from her injuries, and Dylan turned 17 just days after the incident. This situation was very similar to Rodney's own past, as he was only 18 when he killed Amy. The similarities between father and son committing serious crimes at a young age made police nervous. Rodney had little involvement in Dylan's upbringing, having divorced Mary early on and leaving her to raise her son alone. However, he attended Dylan's trial in 2009. Dylan accepted a plea deal that resulted in a 20-year prison sentence, meaning he was scheduled to be released in 2029 when he would be 37. In the case of Amy Widener, Rodney initially claimed that Bagg was his accomplice in the crime. However, just 10 days before his trial was set to begin in June 2013, 42-year-old Rodney changed his story and confessed to killing Amy himself, saying no one else was involved. Due to his confession and the evidence against him, Rodney was sentenced to 65 years in prison in 2013. After the case was over, Amy's family held a reunion with police officer Bill Carter to remember the 24 years without her. They released 24 balloons into the sky in her honor and expressed gratitude to Officer Bill for his essential contributions to the case. Officer Bill identified Rodney Dink as the perpetrator after only 12 days of investigation, essentially closing the case. In recognition of his exceptional efforts, Detective Bill Carter received an award from the Indianapolis Police Department in January 2014. Although he was offered a position in the homicide division, he decided to stay in his current role. Amy's daughter, Emily, grew up and graduated from the same high school her mother attended. She then went on to attend college. In search of more opportunities, she moved from Indianapolis to California. Amy's mother, Gloria, has publicly expressed her ongoing grief and daily remembrance of her daughter. She still lives in the house where the tragedy occurred, with Amy's room still decorated with pictures of her. The space now also welcomes Gloria's grandchildren for holiday visits, bringing joy and new life to a place once filled with sadness. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Annie Tayan. Annie Tayan, born May 1, 1965, was raised by her mother and has a lively personality. She loves to dance, play, and appreciate the simple pleasures of life. Annie cherished the dream of a large family, considering motherhood her main aspiration. She became a mother at a young age, giving birth to her first son, Jimia, when she was 18 and her second son, Sean, just a year later. When she turned 20, she had a daughter named Shane. Unfortunately, shortly after Shane was born, the children's father left Annie and chose not to be involved in their lives, leaving her with the hardships of single motherhood. Annie managed a household of 3 young children while living in a rented apartment in Maine. In 1987, when her youngest daughter, Shane, was just 6 months old, 22-year-old Annie began a new chapter in her life. She met Michael Palin, 32, a Navy officer stationed on the aircraft carrier Brambye. Their meeting took place in Portland, Maine, where Michael's ship was docked, and he felt a strong attraction to Annie during their waterfront encounter. Originally from Charleston, South Carolina, Michael was a respected Navy member, best known for his work as a computer systems operator. He was actively involved in military operations and received several awards for his service. Annie found Michael's Navy career impressive and quickly fell in love, telling a friend that he was the man she believed was truly worthy of her affections. After a few months of dating, Annie and Michael decided to move in together, starting a family with 2 sons and a daughter. Unfortunately, their lives changed completely when a fire broke out in their apartment. Annie was out at the time, leaving Michael at home with the children. Michael, along with Jemia and Sean, escaped, but Shane, who was too young to walk, was left behind. When Annie returned, she tried to enter the burning apartment to rescue Shane but was stopped by neighbors. The loss of Shane had a profound impact on Annie, who felt that the tragedy had left an irreplaceable void in her heart. As the police investigated the fire, they struggled to determine the exact cause of the fire. The circumstances surrounding the fire aroused the police's suspicions. However, the investigation ended without anyone being held accountable. After the tragedy, Annie and her sons moved into her mother's home in Portland, while Michael focused on his work and chose to live in the barracks. A few months after the move, another disturbing event occurred near Annie's mother's home. A shed in the backyard caught fire. Police quickly tracked down the source of the fire and found a lighter engraved with the word Bramby, the name of the ship where Michael worked. This evidence made Michael the prime suspect in the arson case. However, police were unable to conclusively prove his involvement due to insufficient evidence. After the second fire, child welfare agencies in Maine assessed that Annie Tayan's sons were living in an unsafe environment. As a result, they made the difficult decision to remove Jemia and Sean from her custody and place them in the foster care system under the Department of Social Services. This decision devastated Annie as she desperately tried to regain custody of her sons. Despite her efforts, she was unsuccessful, leaving her heartbroken and separated from her sons. When Michael returned to Charleston, South Carolina, he settled into a rental apartment and rekindled his relationship with Annie. Despite their complicated past, Annie agreed to move in with him in Goose Creek, a suburb of Charleston. However, her time there changed when she discovered a photo of Michael wearing a wedding ring, indicating that he was married. When confronted about it, Michael confessed that he had been married once but had long since divorced. He explained that his ex-wife, Dawn Breeze, and their 3 children lived at his mother's house in Savannah, Georgia. Although Michael assured Annie that there was no ongoing relationship with Dawn, she felt uneasy about the information. Annie considered leaving him, but decided to stay, believing that he might be the right partner to start a family with. Unfortunately, their life together soon turned sour. As Michael's behavior toward Annie became increasingly hostile and demeaning. Annie, who was planning to return to her mother's home, discovered that she was pregnant. This news caused her to put her plans on hold because she was excited about having another child. In October 1989, just a month before she went missing, Annie gave birth to her 4th daughter, Jade. Although she understood that Jade could never replace her lost daughter, she felt that Jade had brought great joy to her life. Unfortunately, a month after Jade was born, Michael's treatment of Annie took a turn for the worse. He began to publicly insult and humiliate her. Annie shared her concerns with a friend, expressing her fear that Michael would relentlessly pursue her if she tried to leave. His controlling behavior became more intense. He isolated Annie in their apartment while he was at work by disconnecting his phone, keeping it in his bag, and carrying it with him. Annie became increasingly frightened by Michael's actions. Just 2 days before her disappearance, Annie called her close friend Katie French in a distressed state. During the call, Annie revealed her plans to leave Michael. However, Michael threatened her by saying that if she left, he would keep their daughter Jade with him, preventing Annie from seeing her daughter again. Annie was in a distressed state, crying and begging Katie to come to her and Jade's aid. Unfortunately, Katie was busy and unable to help her. Instead, she sent Annie money for a bus ticket, hoping that it would allow her to escape and return to Portland. This emotional conversation would be their last. 2 days later, on November 7, 1989, Katie attempted to contact Annie but received no response. A few days later, Michael contacted Katie to inform her that on November 6, Annie had packed up and left without saying where she was going. Katie expected Annie to contact her from her new home. But after 2 weeks of silence, she began to worry. By Thanksgiving on November 24, Annie had been out of contact for 20 days. Worried about her friend, Katie contacted all of Annie's friends, but no one had any information about her whereabouts. Katie attempted to report 24-year-old Annie missing to the police, but was told that, since she was not a blood relative, she could not file a formal report. As months passed without any sign of Annie, Katie finally got Michael's mother's phone number. When she called, she was shocked to learn that Annie's youngest daughter, Jade, was staying with Michael's mother. The news confirmed Katie's worst fears. She believed that Annie would never want to leave her daughter. Shortly after this disturbing news, Michael was transferred to the naval base at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. Despite the situation of Annie, the mother of his child, he showed little concern for her whereabouts. Michael did not contact the police or begin searching for her. Months after Annie Tayan went missing, an official search began following a report from her mother. The investigation quickly focused on her partner, Michael Palin, who became the prime suspect. Michael claimed that on the morning of November 6th, he woke up to find Annie had left while he was babysitting his daughter. He said that the night before, Annie had expressed a desire to end their relationship. He made no attempt to find her, believing that their relationship was over and that further contact was pointless. Michael also claimed that he was unaware that Annie had been reported missing or that she had lost contact with family and friends. When police searched the couple's rented apartment, they found no evidence, no clues, traces, or suspicious items that could help the investigation. Annie Tayan's case seemed to have stalled and no large-scale search was conducted for her. It is still unclear whether she is still alive, and any possible motive for her disappearance is unknown. The only confirmed detail is that the last person reported to have seen her was her partner, Michael. For 4 long years, there were no updates or discoveries about Annie. Her close friend Katie French was the only one actively searching for her, cooperating tirelessly with the investigation. Katie spent approximately $16,000 on phone bills alone and hired a private investigator as part of her relentless quest to find Annie Tayan. She contacted various organizations in the hopes of uncovering information about Michael's past. Katie was convinced that Michael was dangerous and untrustworthy. She feared him greatly, knowing that if he discovered her involvement with the police, it could put her in danger. In 1993, Annie's case took a major turn when it was transferred to the Naval Criminal Investigative Service, NCIS, marking a major turning point in the investigation. NCIS agents began a full review of the case from the beginning. They located Michael, who was stationed at Pearl Harbor Naval Station in Hawaii. When approached by Marine Corps police officers to discuss Annie's disappearance, Michael agreed to talk, but only in the presence of his attorney. He then completely stopped cooperating with the investigation and refused to provide further information. The Coast Guard gathered every available detail about Annie's disappearance and contacted South Carolina police. They asked for help in comparing their information with the records of the unidentified bodies, noting that Annie had given birth just a month before her disappearance. Then, South Carolina police reported a case involving a dead woman who had also given birth a month before her death. They sent a sketch of the woman, which shocked Coast Guard agents who saw it. They believed they might have found Annie Tayan. The discovery revealed a horrific murder. Annie's body was found near a highway in Jasper County, South Carolina, about 100 miles from where she lived with Michael. The crime scene photos were horrifying, showing a level of violence that agents said they had rarely witnessed. Annie's face was severely damaged and her skull was broken into 124 pieces, requiring nearly 500 hours of detailed reconstruction. It was also revealed that Annie's body had been placed in a navy blue bag that had been doused with gasoline and then set on fire. The burning bag was discovered at 6 a.m. on November 7, 1989, around the same time Katie French realized Annie had stopped answering her phone calls. Annie Tayan's dental records were used to positively identify her as the unidentified woman. After Annie's body was found, Michael became the prime suspect in the murder. Coast Guard agents developed a thorough investigation plan, starting with a review of his financial transactions. They discovered that on the day Annie went missing, Michael made a credit card purchase about 25 miles south of where her burned body was found. Additionally, his phone records showed that on the morning of November 6, he called his mother's home in Savannah twice, the first time at 4:35 a.m. and the second time at 5:17 a.m. Coast Guard agents believe that Michael killed Annie in their apartment and then moved her body to the side of the road, where he set it on fire. To advance the investigation, NCIS agents targeted Michael's ex-wife, Dawn Breeze. At the time of Annie's death, Dawn was still married to Michael and living at his mother's house in Savannah. After Annie's disappearance, Dawn divorced Michael and began moving frequently between states, as if she were trying to escape someone or something. The agents eventually discovered that she was living in Miami, Florida, in the summer of 1995, nearly 6 years after Annie's murder. They located Dawn, who had been engaging in spiritualistic activities for income. When the agents visited Dawn at her workplace to discuss Annie's disappearance, her response was surprisingly calm. She questioned the length of the conversation, expressing a desire to eat if the conversation was prolonged. This response surprised the agents, who had expected a more emotional response when Annie was mentioned. Dawn, however, remained calm throughout their conversation. During the 10-hour interrogation, Dawn's story initially matched Michael's. She said that when she visited Michael's apartment, he told her that his mistress had left him and that he planned to raise his daughter alone. However, there were discrepancies in the timeline of her visit. At one point, Dawn became quiet, looked down, and expressed a desire to tell the truth. Her subsequent speech was emotionless and tearless as she revealed what she had kept secret for 6 years. Dawn explained that one morning, Michael had called her urgently to his apartment in Charleston. There, she saw Annie's dead body on the living room floor. Michael then told Dawn to go into the bedroom to see his daughter. At the time, Dawn and Michael were still legally married and had 3 children together. Michael admitted to having an affair with Annie, which resulted in the birth of a daughter. He begged Dawn to accept the child and help him raise her. Dawn suggested that Michael, not wanting to fight for custody of Annie, had chosen murder as a simpler solution. On the night of November 5 to 6, 1989, Michael and Annie went to bed after having an intimate moment. Annie soon fell asleep, and during this time, Michael picked up a crowbar and began to violently attack her. Shockingly, their daughter Jade was sleeping next to Annie during the attack. Michael continued to hit Annie in the head more violently, and although she tried to fight back, she eventually died of her injuries in their bed. Michael then contacted his wife Dawn and asked her to come over immediately. He placed Annie's body in a duffel bag and placed it in the trunk of his car, along with a can of gasoline. He then put Dawn and Jade in the back seat of his car and drove about 100 miles. When he found a secluded spot along the side of the road, he took Annie's body out of the trunk, doused it with gasoline, and set it on fire. Once the fire was out, he quickly got back in the car and drove Dawn and Jade back to his mother's house in Savannah. Dawn's revelations marked a major turning point in the investigation, marking the first significant piece of evidence since the discovery of Annie's remains. Police asked Dawn to make a recorded phone call to her ex-husband, Michael, to discuss Annie's murder. Dawn agreed and contacted Michael, saying she needed to have a serious conversation because Annie's body had been found. Michael's response, "No, they didn't," confirmed to police that Dawn's account was credible. During the call, Dawn mentioned that blood had been discovered in their old apartment and that NCIS was investigating them as suspects in the murder. She urged Michael to come up with an explanation for the blood. Michael responded, "Okay, we need to work together and come up with something," which did not include any direct admission of guilt. However, his tone suggested that he understood the seriousness of the situation. He did not ask unnecessary questions or deny involvement, indicating that he knew what was being discussed. This conversation further supported the theory that Annie was murdered in Michael's apartment. At the end of the conversation, Michael warned Dawn to be careful with her phone calls and assured her that they would work together to resolve the situation. NCIS agents took Dawn to the crime scene to search for any remaining evidence. To protect her identity and ensure her safety as a cooperating witness, they disguised her before arriving at the apartment. Dawn carefully described and demonstrated the location of Annie's body and a sequence of events. She pointed out a spot near the wall and baseboard where a large amount of blood had seeped into the carpet and concrete floor below. Since Michael moved out, the landlord had replaced and cleaned the carpet several times, which is why there were no visible traces of blood. However, when the police used a special chemical on the concrete floor, a large purple stain appeared, indicating the presence of protein and matching Dawn's description of where Annie's body had been. Although the blood had soaked into the concrete, NCIS still had difficulty proving with certainty that the substance was blood. Therefore, the search for more physical evidence continued. Dawn mentioned a dresser next to the bed where Annie was killed, which contained a television covered in blood from the murder. Michael had said that the television needed a thorough cleaning because of the stains. He had then thrown it away, presumably selling it rather than throwing away a working device. Given his thrifty tendencies, finding the television was difficult. However, the agents were determined to find it. At this point, Michael realized that NCIS was watching him, especially after a phone call with his ex-wife, Dawn. Realizing this, he became very wary of their surveillance. NCIS agents were concerned that Michael might attempt to escape, threaten witnesses, or possibly harm someone. During a surveillance mission, Michael attempted to escape from the police, but was quickly apprehended by the police. As a result, on October 11, 1995, he was arrested. While he was being held in a military prison on suspicion of murder, NCIS agents interviewed all the residents of the apartment complex where the murders took place in November 1989. 3 months later, their efforts finally paid off when a neighbor revealed that he had purchased a television from Michael. Amazingly, the television was still working and in his home. The police quickly confiscated the television and sent it to the FBI lab for detailed forensic analysis. This examination led to a major breakthrough. They found 11 bloodstains on the speaker, which were later determined to match Annie's DNA, providing a key piece of evidence in the murder investigation. At this point in the case, Michael's attorney announced that he was willing to plead guilty, but only if the death penalty was dropped. Although the prosecutor was not happy with this development, military law required such deals to be considered at trial. Michael admitted his guilt without showing much emotion, recounting the details of his crime. His story showed no signs of remorse or sorrow. Michael Palin was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole after 30 years. Although Dawn knew about her husband's crimes and kept quiet for 6 years, she avoided legal consequences because her confession to NCIS was crucial in moving the investigation forward. Annie's children, including her son and daughter, now know what happened to their biological mother and understand that she did not abandon them. Jade, Annie's daughter with Michael, has grown into a beautiful woman. In a surprising turn of events, Michael Palin was released from prison in 2013 after serving only 17 years, supposedly for good behavior. His whereabouts are currently unknown, and anyone who sees him is advised to exercise caution. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Laura Day. Laura Day was born in 1965 and lived in Orange, California at the age of 17. At the time, she was dating a 21-year-old college student named James Kendall. Although their relationship seemed to be going well, there was a problem. James was seeing other girls. Laura found out about this, and instead of ending the relationship, she decided to take revenge while hiding her true feelings. On May 11, 1982, James drove Laura home to Laguna Beach. After getting out of the pickup, she took a pistol from her car and shot James in the chest before shooting herself. James died at the scene, while Laura was shot in the shoulder and survived. Neighbors who heard the gunshots called 911, and emergency services arrived quickly. James died and Laura was taken to the hospital for treatment of her injuries. Initially, the police thought that a robbery might have taken place, based on Laura's story. However, they quickly doubted this idea when they found no signs of theft at the crime scene. The police discovered a note left by Laura on a jeweler's business card, stating that she had intended to kill her boyfriend and then end her life, to escape responsibility for her actions. In reality, she was unable to carry out her plan to end her life. Instead, she shot herself in the shoulder to make it look like an attack on the couple. This is why she changed her story after she recovered. Laura was brought in for questioning by police. During the interview, her story changed several times. She tried to convince them that she was the victim of a robbery, but her testimony was confusing. She struggled to explain why she wrote a particular note or why James was shot with her gun. Eventually, under pressure, Laura confessed that she had committed the crime out of desperation, claiming that she had been a victim of violence and feared for her life. She described James as a cruel man who had abused her on a regular basis and had been having affairs with other girls, which had left her suffering. As the investigation continued, more details emerged. James had not only dated other girls, but had also intended to end their relationship. On the day of the murder, he had informed Laura of this. It seemed that she had anticipated this outcome. She had brought a gun, written a note, and shot him as part of her revenge plan. Laura was possessive and did not want to share him with anyone. After Laura was convicted of second-degree murder, she was sentenced to the California Department of Juvenile Welfare. While this option may seem milder than a typical adult prison sentence, being surrounded by other teenagers posed significant risks for her. Despite experiencing a few assaults, her time there was generally uneventful. Fortunately, Laura was released in 1987 after serving 5 years. While incarcerated, she pursued her education and earned a degree in psychology. After her release, it seemed that Laura had learned valuable lessons about discipline and reintegration into society. At first, this was true. In the early 1990s, she moved to Baltimore and worked as a nurse at a hospital. During this time, she also got married. However, she found the job too difficult and stressful, and the salary did not meet her expectations, leading her to quit and get a divorce. Club dancer, a job that suited her well. She earned good money with minimal effort and attracted a lot of attention due to her beauty. With many fans showering her with gifts, she became quite popular. However, her personal life was tumultuous. She got married twice more, but she did not get divorced after the first marriage and immediately entered into the second one. The competent authorities found out about this, and a case was opened against her. This led to a new trial in 1993. She faced charges, and the police suspected she was married to a third man as well. Ultimately, she received a 6-month suspended sentence. Unfortunately, this punishment did not deter her. Her reckless lifestyle continued to lead her into trouble. Just 2 years later, Laura was arrested again, this time for using a firearm. She shot up her own car and attempted to stage it as an accident. In an attempt to obtain insurance fraudulently, the scheme was uncovered. Additionally, the girl had stolen various items, including a ring valued at about $3,000. During the investigation, it was found that she had stolen everything from her neighbors. For her crimes of fraud and theft, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison. However, she only served 6 months before her sentence was overturned, and she was released. In 1997, Laura relocated to Corpus Christi, Texas, a city located on the Gulf Coast in the southern part of the state. During this time, she resumed her previous work as a dancer and became a well-known bikini model. She also expanded her activities by selling explicit images and adult content, which proved to be quite profitable. With her earnings, Laura was able to purchase a mansion by the ocean, fulfilling a lifelong dream. The woman remained dedicated to her ambitions and continuously pursued her happiness. During this time, she met a British man named Fieldy, and their romance blossomed quickly, leading to marriage. They soon welcomed a son, Cameron. Friends observed that she was a devoted mother who took Cameron to football games. Other mothers were wary of her, fearing she might attract their husbands. This concern was not entirely baseless. Although Laura and Fieldy's married life appeared happy, it was not as it seemed. Their family happiness was short-lived, and the marriage ended in the summer of 2011. At that time, Laura was working as a sales representative when she unexpectedly met a truck driver named David, who was 12 years younger than her. Laura's striking beauty caught the attention of all the men at her workplace. When Laura meets David, they begin talking and discover that both are unhappy in their marriages. David is married to Kelly, while Laura is bored with her boring husband, Fieldy. They begin to communicate regularly. Later, David informs Kelly that he is in love with someone else, which shocks her. Kelly accepts the situation and agrees to a divorce without trying to stop David's new relationship. Both Laura and David filed for divorce and soon moved in together. The couple spent most of their time together, with David's son, Taylor Searing, sometimes staying with them. Kelly, the boy's mother, was very wary of Laura, the woman who had broken up her marriage, and did not trust her. In order to build a relationship with Taylor and Kelly, Laura planned fun weekend activities for David and Taylor, such as baking cookies, going to the movies, and shopping. Through these efforts, Laura was able to bond with Taylor and improve her relationship with Kelly, David's ex-wife. Laura was very happy in her new marriage with David. They got married in August 2012 in Las Vegas. After the wedding, they moved into Laura's luxurious mansion, which had a large swimming pool. David worked as a truck driver and was often away from home. While Laura, who was not working at the time, enjoyed her days at home, enjoying her comfortable life. A tragic event occurred unexpectedly. On Friday, October 5, 2012, Laura picked Taylor up from school so he could spend the week with his father David. Laura had arranged this with his biological mother Kelly, who agreed to let her son stay with his father and spend time with him. On the way home, Taylor asked Laura if they could have a picnic at the beach. Laura agreed but wanted to feed the boy first, so they stopped at McDonald's for a snack. After lunch, they went home to pick up their clothes and beach gear before heading to the beach. However, when they arrived at the nearest beach, they found it very crowded. The parking lot was full and there were many people on the beach, making it noisy. Laura was surprised by the crowd, as it was still a weekday and not many people usually went to the beach at that time. Laura decided to drive further until she found a quieter, more suitable place. After choosing a good spot, they stopped and Laura let the child swim in the water. Normally, the boy wore a special life jacket, but that day he could not use it because his neck was injured and his collar was irritated. To avoid causing discomfort to the tailor, Laura decided to let him swim without a life jacket, as she believed it was safe. She watched him for a few minutes and was pleased with how well Taylor swam. He always practiced in the pool at her house. Feeling reassured, she let him swim without a life jacket. At first, everything went smoothly as she watched him from the shore. However, after only a few minutes, something pulled the boy under the water and he disappeared from sight. Taylor sank and did not come up to the surface. Laura noticed the situation, felt scared and jumped into the water to look for the boy. She searched for the boy but couldn't find him. Just a few feet from where he had sunk, he floated to the surface and began to drift with the waves. Laura spotted Taylor, swam to him and yelled to try to wake him, but he was unresponsive. She pulled him to shore, but he wasn't breathing and showed no signs of life. She tried to remove the water from his lungs, but in her panic she couldn't perform CPR, even though she knew how. She called 911 for help, but the doctors told her it would take too long to get there because the resort was far from the city. Realizing this, Laura decided to take matters into her own hands. She put the boy in the car, got in the driver's seat, and drove herself to the hospital. Laura quickly delivered Taylor to the hospital after covering about 20 kilometers in just 30 minutes. She was screaming for help as she arrived. Despite efforts to resuscitate him, it was too late, and Taylor was pronounced dead. He had already turned blue, and medical staff confirmed his death. The doctors reported the incident to the police as part of standard procedure. The police contacted David at work to inform him of the tragic news. He immediately rushed to the hospital. Police also informed Kelly of the tragedy, and she hurried to the hospital to gather more information. Upon her arrival, Kelly learned only that her son had drowned. The doctors could not provide further details. Laura stood nearby and revealed that she had not told anyone about taking Taylor to the beach and had decided to go at his request. She described the situation as a tragic accident. Kelly begins screaming in the hospital, accusing Laura of causing her son's death. Laura appears emotionless, showing that she does not care. The child's father, David, blames Kelly for not taking care of their son. To everyone's surprise, it is revealed that the boy was with Laura at the beach at the time of the incident. Kelly was especially upset that Laura had allowed the boy to swim without a life jacket, despite the strong waves that could be dangerous even for adults. The waves were indeed powerful, and there was a dangerous undercurrent that could easily sweep away a child or even an adult. Every responsible adult understands the risks of allowing children to swim in such conditions, so Kelly was left wondering why Laura had acted so recklessly. This negligence ultimately led to the tragic death of the child. The police continued their investigation and began to notice inconsistencies in Laura's account. First, they discovered that the hospital she chose was not the closest to the beach. The child could have been taken to a nearer hospital or to a fire station, where help was readily available. Laura claimed she hadn't considered the fire station, suggesting that panic might have clouded her judgment. Second, the police found it hard to believe that Laura, who had taken a nursing course and worked in a hospital, couldn't administer first aid to the boy. The operator had provided her with phone instructions that even a beginner could follow, and she should have been able to manage the situation. Instead, she chose to drive to a hospital 30 minutes away, despite knowing that brain damage can occur within 5 minutes without oxygen. Her decision seemed illogical under the circumstances. This situation raised many questions about Laura. Laura, David, and the child's mother, Kelly, were taken to the police station for questioning. During the interrogation, Laura displayed no emotion, showing no signs of regret for what had happened. She kept her head down and avoided making eye contact with the police while answering their questions. Her statements were confusing and lacked detail, revealing that her entire account was fabricated. When asked how deep the boy had gone when he disappeared under the water, she simply said he was cute and claimed he had been swept away by a wave, insisting it all happened very quickly. Her behavior was highly suspicious. The Kelly was heartbroken over the loss of her son and blamed Laura for not watching him. David was also deeply affected by the tragedy, and the tension between the parents intensified the sorrow. The loss of her son was devastating for Kelly, as he meant everything to her. It was revealed that Taylor's father wanted full custody of him, wanting to ensure they would always be together. David was actively working with lawyers to achieve this. The police considered this a possible motive for the murder. Laura, who was possessive and had previously given her son to her ex-husband to focus on her personal life, likely did not support her David's desire for full custody. She may have felt that the boy was a threat to her relationship with David and decided to remove that threat. The police further explored David's relationship with Laura by asking him about it. He responded that they seemed to get along well, at least from his perspective. However, he soon began searching for information about his wife online and uncovered troubling details about her past. She had shot her boyfriend, faced accusations of bigamy, and was involved in fraud, theft, and adult content. This revelation shocked him, making it feel as if he was learning about a completely different person. Unable to cope with the information, he confronted Laura, who reassured him that her past was not dangerous or malicious. She explained that her boyfriend had abused her, and she had acted in self-defense. Trusting her words, David decided not to take any action, believing she posed no threat. Consequently, he continued to leave her alone with their son, a decision that ultimately led to the Taylor's tragic death. Police reviewed Laura's extensive criminal history and were shocked. A woman with a past of murder might be capable of repeating such an act. After considering all aspects of the case, police concluded that her actions indicated a willful disregard for the child's safety and criminal negligence. Initially, she failed to inform her parents about her plans, which she should have done to seek their permission. Instead of stopping at a busy public beach, she chose a deserted area. She allowed her son to swim without a life jacket and did not keep an eye on him. When she eventually retrieved him from the water, she was unable to perform basic first aid and instead went to the hospital, which severely compromised the child's chances of survival. Given her medical training, she was fully aware of this. Laura Day was arrested and charged with capital murder. The investigation was ongoing. Meanwhile, a large-scale experiment was conducted using a dummy that matched the deceased child's parameters. However, the experiment did not yield the expected results. The body did not surface as Laura had claimed. This raised doubts about her story. Less than 24 hours after her arrest, she posted $50,000 bail for her release. She was released with restrictions, including a prohibition on being in places where children gather, as she was deemed a potential threat to their safety. At that time, her husband still believed in Laura's innocence and stood by her side. He was deeply affected by the tragedy and was considering moving to Florida with her once the charges were dropped, viewing the situation as a misunderstanding. Despite being restricted from leaving, Laura, the main suspect, acted as if nothing had happened. Just a few days later, she went shopping at a mall, attempting to disguise herself with a wig, but a police officer recognized her, and she could no longer escape scrutiny. On December 4, 2012, she was arrested again for violating her bail conditions. Laura maintained her innocence regarding all charges. The police were conducting a thorough investigation, gathering evidence piece by piece. A witness emerged, stating that there was no panic or urgency to save the boy that day. According to him, Laura calmly took the boy and left the beach with a satisfied expression, even waving goodbye and smiling cheerfully. In January 2013, at the trial, the main piece of evidence against Laura in Taylor's murder was the testimony of a witness. The witness described seeing a woman, presumably Laura, leaving the scene looking content and happy, rather than panicked and anxious. The prosecution argued that Laura's unusual decision to deviate from her usual routine of picking up her son with her husband showed that she had planned ahead. Taking the boy away from his mother earlier under the pretext of spending more time with his father, despite the fact that his father was at work and not present. Laura did not inform anyone about going to the beach. Instead, she chose a secluded spot where there weren't any people around and sent Taylor into the water without a life jacket, seemingly waiting for him to drown in the strong waves. After he was in trouble, she slowly pulled him out, confirmed he wasn't breathing, and failed to attempt any life-saving measures. Instead of waiting for the ambulance, which may have arrived before her, she drove to a distant hospital, wasting the precious final minutes of the child's life. It was only due to a witness who accidentally arrived at the beach while she was leaving and testified against her that Laura was held accountable for her actions. During the trial, several witnesses pointed to inconsistencies in Laura's testimony. For example, she initially mentioned that she and Taylor had stopped by the house to pick up their swimsuits before heading to the beach. However, it was later revealed that she had brought all of her swimsuits, suggesting that she had prepared for the trip in advance. This raised doubts about how she could have anticipated that the boy would invite her to the beach. Additionally, her decision to remove the boy's life jacket was unusual, as he usually swam with it on. Her explanation for this decision seemed implausible, and there were no signs of irritation or injury to Taylor's skin. It became clear that the boy had swum far from the shore, creating a safety risk even though he had the necessary skills. Laura, despite having basic first aid knowledge from her hospital experience, was unable to help the boy. This inability raised doubts about her intentions and whether her actions contributed to the child's death. The mistrust of Laura stemmed from her past conviction for murder and her history of appearing in crime reports. The prosecution argued that she had not learned from her time in prison, suggesting that jealousy, which motivated her previous crime, may have influenced her actions toward the Taylor. The prosecutor suggested that jealousy over the boy was a motive for Laura's actions, arguing that she wanted her husband to focus all his attention on her rather than on his son. This was described as a cruel and selfish act driven by her possessiveness. In contrast, the defense pointed out that no one witnessed the boy's death, making it impossible to know exactly what happened and casting doubt on the prosecution's claims. A witness only saw Laura and the boy leaving the beach, and the autopsy revealed no signs of violent death on Taylor's body, suggesting that Laura did not drown him. Statistics indicate that approximately 800 children and teenagers in the United States die each year due to accidental drowning. The prosecution made a significant point about Laura's inability to perform first aid, which strengthened their case against her. Laura exhibited unusual behavior. She was anxious about being alone and often sought attention through her dramatic appearance. She was very impulsive and viewed other women as competition, which resulted in her having no female friends. Laura showed signs of extreme fear of being alone, both during and after the trial. At times, Laura perceived Kelly as a threat. Despite facing the possibility of life in prison, Laura did not appear overly concerned about her future. At one point, she asked her husband, David, if he loved her more than his ex-wife Kelly, which seemed inappropriate in such a situation. Laura seemed obsessed with being the central figure in David's life, viewing the child as a rival. While the child was alive, it would have been a link between Kelly and David, which may have hindered Laura's ambitions. This obsessive thinking may have led her to rationalize her choice to eliminate the child as a form of self-defense. In her mind, she was protecting her relationship with David. At first, David stood by his wife, Laura. However, as the investigation progressed and new evidence emerged, he came to believe that Laura intentionally killed their child. This realization prompted him to file for divorce, resulting in the end of their marriage. In June 2013, Laura Day was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. Despite her conviction, Laura continues to assert her innocence. Although the prosecution presented strong arguments, the lack of direct evidence against her led some to question the court's decisions. Currently, even in prison, Laura remains hopeful. She has found a new partner during her incarceration and has begun a new relationship. Despite knowing she will spend the rest of her life behind bars. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Christy Johnson. Christy Johnson was born in 1981 in Santa Clara, California, USA. She lives with her parents, Teresa and Kirk Johnson. When she was a child, her family moved from California to Saugatuck, a small town in Michigan. Saugatuck is a quiet town with less than 1,000 residents. It seems like a safe place to build a happy future with an extremely low crime rate. The locals feel so safe that they don't even lock their doors. It's a tight-knit community where everyone knows each other. Christy has an older brother named Derek, who is just a few years older than her. Her parents later divorced, but they maintained a good relationship for the sake of their children. Christy and Derek took turns living with their father and mother as required by the custody agreement. As a result, Christy quickly took on household responsibilities. From the age of 12, she began helping her mother, including managing the family budget. Christy sought part-time work to gain independence and avoid having to ask her parents for money. Eventually, her brother Derek enlisted in the army and decided to pursue a career in the military. During this time, Christy was in high school. Christy is fun and interesting to talk to. She leads an active and healthy lifestyle. Christy enjoys sailing, surfing, and anything water-related. She also enjoys theater and is a member of a small acting club. In the winter, she works as a waitress at a local cafe. Her pleasant, polite, and sociable attitude attracts many customers. Christy grew increasingly eager to leave the small town of Saugatuck, as the peaceful environment there did not suit her. In 1999, she graduated from high school, finally having the freedom to begin forging her own path to success. After some reflection, Christy decided to begin her journey of exploring different cities, exploring different jobs. Initially, she moved in with her grandmother in the small resort town of Santa Maria. Population 100,000. Finding a job to support herself was important. She then worked as a systems administrator for an electric utility company and continued her education. Christy decided to enroll in the University of California, a 40-minute drive from her grandmother's home. Although she used her savings to buy a car, the daily commute proved difficult, so Christy looked for work closer to her studies. Christy got a part-time job with a film crew. Her experience working in a theater group helped her adjust to her new work environment. She was hired as an assistant on the set of a horror film, where she met people from Hollywood. She interacted with world-famous actors and directors and felt extremely happy. Christy was fascinated by the world of cinema. Inspired by this experience, she wanted to get more involved in the industry, so she enrolled in professional makeup courses taught by Hollywood makeup artists. After mastering these skills, she considered becoming a makeup artist on set and planned to move to Los Angeles. She eventually moved to Los Angeles, where many famous film studios were located. When she arrived in her new environment, she avoided parties and social gatherings. She had a boyfriend whom she met a few years ago. They kept in touch despite the distance, and later he moved in with her. They rented an apartment together in Los Angeles. Since 2002, they have been struggling financially. Although it was not easy, Christy persevered in finding a stable job. Christy still had not found a steady job, so most of her income came from her boyfriend. Then their relationship deteriorated. Christy confided in her mother that their arguments often ended with him physically abusing her. She felt trapped in a toxic relationship. Her mother began looking for a new place for Christy to live. Eventually, Christy left her boyfriend, moved into a small apartment, and continued her studies. Her father supported her financially, hoping that she would find her way. By November 2002, Christy had found a job at a cell phone company. Although the job did not match her career goals or salary expectations, her mother then found her a new home close to her workplace in Santa Monica, a town near Los Angeles, where Christy shared a living space with 2 other girls. During this time, she transferred to Santa Monica College. Christy's Hollywood dreams did not come true. Her relationship ended and she started over. Despite this, she remained determined and continued to pursue her dreams. On February 15, 2003, Christy was scheduled to attend a party. Before that, she went to a shopping mall and had a long phone conversation with her mother about her future plans. This turned out to be the last time the family heard from her. The next day, February 16th, Christy's mother tried to call her daughter. At first, she was not worried, thinking that Christy might be resting or working and unable to answer the phone. However, when she received no response, she became more worried. By 9 a.m. the next day, Christy's mother contacted her workplace, where Christy was known to be punctual and reliable. Christy's manager confirmed that she had not shown up for work. A coworker told her that Christy was supposed to be attending a party. Christy's mother searched her daughter's social media but found no useful information about the event. Although Christy shared many photos of her life, she had not posted anything about the party. The mother also reviewed Christy's bank account transactions and noticed that there had been no activity since Christy stopped communicating. Worried, she called all the hospitals, but Christy was not admitted to any of them. On February 17th, her mother reported Christy missing to the Santa Monica Police Department. Police investigated whether she had been involved in any traffic accidents but found no clues. Friends who lived with her reported that they had not heard anything unusual after she went missing. Police contacted her ex-boyfriend, Todd. They considered the possibility that he might have harmed her, but he denied seeing her. Neighbors said they saw Christy on Saturday, February 15th, on her way to a party, but they did not know who she was with or where the party was. The police had to get at least something connected with the Christy, so her car, a white oil Mint, was sought. While interviewing her mother, they learned more about her ex-boyfriend, Todd, and her new boyfriend, Lucas. However, Christy's mother had very little information about Lucas. She didn't even know his last name, which complicated the investigation. It had been 48 hours since Christy was reported missing, a critical time frame in which police feared she might not be alive. They began checking cell phone records and discovered that Christy's last outgoing call was made at 5:34 p.m. on February 15th. She had called the helpline at 411, which could indicate that she was in distress and seeking assistance with an address or phone number. The conversation lasted about 3 minutes, suggesting it was important to the investigation, but specific details could not be obtained because the calls were not recorded. After that call, Christy's phone battery died, with her last known location being near Ventura Boulevard. Police reached out to the media to assist in the investigation. News outlets quickly began to cover Christy's disappearance. Police searched Christy's apartment for clues and discovered a receipt from a lingerie store dated February 15th, the day she went missing. They also learned that Christy had been in contact with Todd, her ex, despite his violent tendencies. She last visited him on February 7th. Police discovered a key clue while reviewing Christy's emails. On February 13th, Christie sent a message to the event manager expressing her intention to purchase tickets. However, she was told that all the tickets were sold out and was placed on a special waiting list. This tactic is often used by event organizers to deceive customers and then sell tickets at a higher price. The police then found Christie's new boyfriend, Lucas, and interviewed him. He reported that he last saw Christie on February 14th, the day she went missing. They spent the evening watching a movie before saying goodbye. He passed a polygraph test, had a solid alibi, and did not raise any suspicions with the police. Next, police spoke with Christie's ex-boyfriend, Todd, who also had an alibi. He was confirmed by multiple witnesses to be out of town. Police focused in particular on the party Christie attended when she went missing. Police contacted the organizers of the event and were surprised to learn that Christie had never purchased a ticket and did not attend the party. This raised questions about where she might have gone instead. To reconstruct the timeline of that evening, police reviewed transactions made with Christie's bank card. This investigation revealed the stores she had visited that day. Police then searched for surveillance camera footage that might provide details or clues about her activities. The police then received a call from a woman named Susan Murphy, who reported seeing a suspicious person. She recounted her encounter with a man named Victor Lawrence Paleologos at a store, where Victor said he was a representative of a film company that was casting for a new James Bond film. Susan said he asked her to audition for the role of Bond's girlfriend, complimented her appearance, and tried to convince her to join. Feeling uncomfortable with him, she eventually turned down his offer. To ensure her safety, her husband, a former police officer, went to see Victor. He spoke to Victor to try to learn more about his intentions, but Victor fled without providing any useful information. Susan later investigated Victor further and discovered that he had lied, that he had absolutely nothing to do with the film. Victor likely fabricated this information to meet beautiful women, although his motives remain unclear. Although Susan is safe, Victor is still at large and could pose a danger, making it important to verify this information and locate him. They then decide to interview employees in the store. Police described Victor, who had a reputation for harassing attractive women, in these conversations. At one store, a clerk reported seeing a person matching the police description but was unable to provide any useful details. The search for Christie intensified. Police deployed dogs and volunteers to the area where she was last seen. Volunteers searched for Christie and her car. Although police had received multiple reports of sightings of a similar vehicle, those reports turned out to be false. On February 24th, police received a crucial tip. They located her car, a white Mazda Miata, in a parking lot near the shopping center where Christie had been shopping. A forensic scientist then arrived to conduct a thorough examination of the car, collecting fingerprints and other evidence found inside. A water bottle was found in the back seat, and Christie's cell phone was found in the front seat. The police encountered an unexpected revelation when they spoke with the parking attendant. He recalled an incident involving the car in question. The vehicle arrived at 17:45, but it was already reserved for another customer. A man exited the car, and when informed of the reservation, he reacted aggressively. He threw the car keys at the attendant and left without further explanation. Sadly, there were no surveillance cameras in the parking area, making it impossible to identify the driver. With no leads, the police returned to examining the Christie's purchases from that day and were taken aback. On the day she disappeared, Christie had bought a set of clothes that matched the description Susan had given when Victor asked her to prepare for the casting. He instructed Susan to buy the shortest black miniskirt possible, along with a white shirt, stockings, and shoes. All these items were purchased using Christie's bank card, leading the police to suspect that this was not merely a coincidence. This suggests that Christie may have fallen for a scammer, similar to what happened to Susan, although fortunately she was with her husband. Unfortunately, there was no news of Victor, and the police had no way to contact him. Police once again spoke to Christie's housemates. They recalled that Christie had indeed attended and tried out the role, although they could not recall the specifics. During the discussion, they noted that it was related to James Bond. They mentioned that Christie was very excited about the event, and she had gone to get ready in costume. Christie was worried about being late for the tryout the role, which was scheduled for 5:30 p.m. Police reviewed the camera footage several times to locate Victor, and unfortunately, the footage was of poor quality and they were unable to identify his facial features. However, with the help of witness statements, police were able to create a composite sketch of the prime suspect in Christie's disappearance. By February 26, the sketch was complete. An experienced police officer familiar with the case identified the suspect as Victor Lawrence Paleologus, who had just been paroled on January 20, 2003, after serving a sentence for sexual assault. Victor often used tactics like promising casting calls for parties to lure his victims. This approach worked for him, especially near the Walk of Fame, where many young women who come to Los Angeles to dream of Hollywood make them easy targets for predators. Victor first received a suspended sentence for attacking a girl. In 1998, he attempted to rape Katie Devina, presenting himself as Brian, a film producer. He received a very short sentence for this crime. There are also indications that Victor had embezzled money from a company before. In addition, several other women came forward as victims of his attempted rapes, but the police reports did not result in any consequences for him due to lack of evidence. He once attacked his ex-girlfriend in her own home. Although this was also an unsuccessful sexual assault, he stole money and jewelry from her apartment. This crime was largely overlooked, resulting in only a suspended sentence. He then seduced a girl named Heather, as he had done with others, and convinced her to dress in a way that pleased him. He then attempted to tie her up and rape her, but she escaped. Victor was sentenced to 2 years in prison and was paroled on January 20, 2003, just 3 weeks before Christie went missing. After his release, Victor quickly returned to his previous criminal activities. By the time police began searching for him, he had been arrested for stealing a BMW X5 in Beverly Hills and attempting to sell it using false documents. During a search of his wallet after his arrest, officers discovered a wallet containing several stolen IDs, credit cards, and other documents. The police showed Susan a photo of Victor. At the police station, Susan quickly recognized Victor in a lineup, despite his attempts to disguise himself by hunching over, changing the shape of his arms, and changing his hairstyle. Susan's husband, who had tried to stop the attacker, also confirmed Victor's identity. However, a security guard at the parking lot where Christie's car was found could not recognize Victor, as he had only seen him briefly in the darkness. Victor denied any involvement in Christie's disappearance and insisted on having a lawyer present before speaking to the police. Victor expressed concern that the authorities might be trying to frame him because he was on parole. Police kept collecting evidence against Victor, and a new witness soon came forward. A realtor had been working with Victor for several weeks and noticed his unusual behavior while looking for homes priced up to $700,000. They visited multiple properties each day, and during one visit, they experienced an incident involving lost documents and keys that suggested Victor might be involved in theft. After the realtor saw Victor's photo in a police report, they recognized him as a possible suspect. The realtor recalled Victor behaving nervously during their last meeting, which happened around the time Christie disappeared. Additionally, while viewing a house, Victor tested the soundproofing by shouting from the bathroom, raising police suspicions that he was scouting for a potential crime scene. The police investigated all the homes Victor had visited, paying special attention to one where Christie's phone last registered a signal. They searched for evidence or Christie's body but found nothing. However, when they searched Victor's apartment, they discovered unsettling photos of women in revealing clothing. After 12 days of investigation, Christie's family remained hopeful for her safe return, while Victor was uncooperative, denying any involvement but acknowledging that he had seen Christie before she disappeared. Victor was born in 1962 in Pennsylvania as the youngest of 5 brothers in a family. He attended college, earned a bachelor's degree, and then moved to Los Angeles for graduate studies. He was married from 1990 to 1993, during which time there were allegations that he attempted to poison his wife after she reported his business failures. Feeling aggrieved by the world, Victor turned to crime, and his obsession with attractive women led him to violence. On the night Christie went missing, Victor and his lawyer provided an alibi backed by witnesses, stating he was at a restaurant with a friend. Nevertheless, police believed he might have had enough time to abduct another victim despite his alibi. On March 1st, a new witness contacted the police, saying that he had seen Christie on February 15th. She was near his house, asking for directions to a mansion that looked like a castle. His wife overheard the conversation and gave Christie directions to the location. Christie later called the information desk, confirming that she was indeed looking for a house that looked like a castle, which also fit the type of house Victor was considering because of its soundproofing. While the police were following up on this lead, something else important happened. On March 3, 2003, 4 teenagers hiking in the Hollywood Hills discovered something unusual about 100 meters below them. At first, they thought it was a mannequin, but upon closer inspection, they realized it was a human body. Without cell phones, they rushed to report their discovery to a woman walking her dog on the road. The woman then went to where the teenagers pointed. She saw the victim's legs were tied and covered with a blue cloth. The woman was wearing a gray hoodie, her hands were tied behind her back, and there was a hair tie around her right wrist. She immediately called the police. Rescue workers and police quickly arrived at the scene and, after much effort, were able to remove the body from the Hollywood Hills. The medical examiner identified the body as that of Christie Johnson. Police notified Christie's parents of the tragic news, and they were devastated by the loss. Christie's body had extensive bruising and abrasions. The condition of the body was poor due to significant decomposition from exposure to heat for several days, along with a rainy day. Her face was particularly unrecognizable due to the severity of her injuries. Christie's ear was torn, and there were significant bruises on her head and neck. These injuries were consistent with blunt force trauma and strangulation, which were determined to be the cause of death. Police believed that Victor was responsible for the murder, but they needed to prove that he did not have an alibi for the time of Christie's murder. To do this, police spoke to his friend Joy, who mentioned having dinner with him that night. Upon questioning, Joy stated that they met much later than the time of Christie's death. Joy stated that Victor arrived late for their meeting, around midnight, even though they had planned to meet earlier. Victor had scratches on his face, which he attributed to minor injuries sustained while moving. The police have pieced together the events leading up to Christie's disappearance. The man, who frequently targeted victims at a shopping center, approached Christie, a young girl he found attractive. He claimed to be working in the film industry and invited her to audition for the role of James Bond's love interest, presenting himself convincingly. Flattering Christie, he insisted she was perfect for the part, playing on her ambitions and making it hard for her to refuse. He arranged to meet her at a property he was visiting with a realtor, claiming it was for the audition. Christie prepared for the meeting and wore the outfit he requested. When they met, she became the target of his attack. She tried to scratch his face to fight back. Victor overpowered her, raped her, and killed her to prevent her from reporting the crime. He first struck her on the head and then strangled her, believing she was dead before leaving her body in the Hollywood Hills. Tragically, the blunt force trauma and strangulation didn't lead to her death immediately. She lost consciousness, and he assumed she was dead. When he discarded her onto the rocks from a significant height, she sustained even more injuries. Finally, she regained consciousness and died slowly. On May 12, 2003, the district attorney charged Victor with kidnapping, rape, and first-degree murder. The defense was well prepared to fight for his freedom, as there was no direct evidence linking him to the crime. The prosecution faced a challenging task, relying on compelling arguments from forensic experts. The defense challenged the estimated time of death, citing the presence of insects on the body. However, the similarities between this case and previous attacks attributed to the same criminal. Preparations for the trial took time, and Victor finally appeared in court in July 2006. The defense argued that the prosecutor's office had little to no direct evidence linking Victor to the victim, as there was no DNA, fingerprints, or surveillance camera footage. This lack of evidence was attributed to the fact that the body was discovered 2 weeks after the disappearance, by which time it had decomposed significantly, destroying any potential evidence. However, the prosecution gained the advantage of testifying about who had accused Victor of harassment. They portrayed him as a skilled manipulator. It was clear to everyone that the victor was responsible for Christie's death. To avoid the death penalty, he decided to negotiate with the prosecution and plead guilty to a lesser charge. The only remaining step was for Christie's family to accept this deal. By that point, the trial had been ongoing for 3 weeks with little progress, and its outcome was uncertain. After enduring so much pain, the victim's family was willing to compromise to ensure justice was served. However, on the day the verdict was announced, the victor submitted an 11-page request to the judge, asking to withdraw his guilty plea. Fortunately, it was too late for him to change his mind. Victor Lawrence Paleologos was found guilty on all charges and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Jennifer Levin. On August 26, 1986, around 6:15 a.m., a woman was cycling through Central Park when she spotted something in the grass that looked like a human body. As she got closer, she realized it was a girl's body and, in a panic, she ran to the nearest public phone to call 911. After a few minutes, the police were on the scene, but it was too late to save the girl. The sight of her lifeless body shocked everyone present. The girl's neck showed signs of strangulation, and her face was badly scratched. The police suspected a sexual motive behind the crime. The victim's identity was quickly established because she had an ID on her. She was Jennifer Levin, just 18 years old. Investigations into Jennifer's background revealed that she was both enterprising and humorous. Her parents had divorced when she was 5, and before starting school, she moved to Soho to live with her father, a renowned real estate agent. Although Jennifer was supposed to attend the high school in Manhattan, her father chose to send her to a prestigious private school instead. Jennifer is an excellent and intelligent student, well regarded by her classmates and teachers. Over time, she began to participate in vibrant activities at school and made friends with children whose parents were as wealthy as hers. She easily passed the advanced placement programs, designed to prepare students for prestigious universities like Yale and Harvard. Gradually, she has made new friends at private schools in New York and was invited to parties, expanding her social circle. Although Jennifer's friends live scattered throughout the city, they all gathered in one atmospheric spot for parties. It was here that Jennifer met her first love, a guy named Dorian. However, their relationship ended quickly, so she soon began seeing another young man named Robert Chambers. He claimed to be the son of wealthy parents with their own country club. It wasn't until a year after their first meeting that they started dating. On August 25, 1986, Jennifer started university. However, her excitement was short-lived. By the morning of August 26, she was discovered lifeless in Central Park. What really happened to Jennifer there? Was she a random victim or did someone deliberately target her? As investigators considered the possibility that the incident was sexually motivated, they speculated that Jennifer may have been involved in prostitution. This could explain why she was in such a risky location at night. However, she comes from a rich family and she doesn't need the money, so she wouldn't do that. Also, her relatives denied this. During this time, crime in New York has increased. Among the thousands of murders that take place each year, Jennifer's case stands out and attracts great public attention. The police faced immense pressure because she belonged to a well-respected, wealthy family. Detectives initially suspected a maniac was responsible. At first, it appeared that this was a case of rape, but experienced detectives noticed clues suggesting a staged crime. The body appeared to be in an unusual position, as if caused by sexual violence. However, there were inconsistencies, such as underwear being missing but later found 100 meters away. The detective's suspicions were quickly validated. Forensic analysis found no male DNA, indicating that rape hadn't occurred. The case drew intense media attention, leading to journalists swarming the park. Details of the case were leaked to the media and detectives' theories immediately made headlines. This information is often distorted and comes with falsehoods and rumors. The police successfully kept the victim's name confidential long enough to avoid disrupting the investigation. When Jennifer's mother learned of the incident, she hurried to Central Park and was confronted with her worst fear: her daughter had died. During that tragic moment, reporters surrounded she and continuously asked her questions. Soon after, friends and other family members of Jennifer arrived. And Jennifer's father informed her classmates about the tragedy. Jennifer's family and friends provided the police with crucial information to aid the investigation. It was discovered that the night before her murder, Jennifer planned to spend time with two friends. Her father had given her a diary where she noted her upcoming plans, helping to trace the incident leading to the brutal murder. The primary suspect was Jennifer's ex-boyfriend, Dorian, whom she had recently broken up with. He is believed to have held a grudge against her, which may have been the motive for the murder. It was revealed that he had met Jennifer at a Mexican restaurant the evening before the crime. At that time, there were no social networks, mobile phones, or computers to enable rapid information exchange. Detectives gathered information very slowly. They learned that starting at 2:30 a.m., Jennifer was at a bar with the boyfriends of two friends. Around 3:45, one friend left, and shortly after, the other went home. Just before this, Robert arrived at the bar. Jennifer started paying attention to him, and they stayed together until the party ended. Robert was the last person to see her alive. Detectives went to question Robert, who was a 19-year-old living near Central Park. They immediately noticed scratches on his face, and this seemed suspicious. He claimed a cat had caused, but no one believed him. When told that his girlfriend, Jennifer, was dead, he seemed shocked and genuinely worried. He cooperated with the investigation and began answering questions. Robert met Jennifer at the bar party around 3 a.m. They talked about her going to university. As the party was winding down and people started leaving, he and she stayed until around 4 a.m. They then left the bar, said goodbye, and headed home separately. Robert claimed he didn't know what happened afterward and denied involvement in Jennifer's death. She was killed between 4 o'clock and 6 a.m., and a forensic expert later confirmed her death likely occurred around 5:30. Investigators suspect Robert because he was the last person Jennifer was with. And the scratches on his face suggested a struggle. As a result, Robert became the primary suspect. Detectives tried to catch Robert in a lie, but he kept repeating his story like it was rehearsed. The interrogation lasted nearly 12 hours until Robert made a slip and slightly altered his account. This helped investigators get the necessary information they were looking for. They succeeded in getting Robert to confess, which happened under the watchful media presence, with reporters listening from the next room. Less than 24 hours after Jennifer Levin's body was found, Robert Chambers confessed to her manslaughter. According to Robert, he took a walk with Jennifer that night in Central Park. However, during the walk, she attacked him and attempted to have sex without his consent. She tied his hands with her underwear. The girl was very passionate and liked to experiment. Then, she scratched him and grabbed his genitals, causing him to scream and ask her to stop. Robert claims that she only increased the pressure instead of stopping. This story seemed so unbelievable that it made the detectives laugh and also brought shocked reactions from journalists. Robert says he was forced to defend himself due to Jennifer's aggressive actions. He managed to free his hands and, attempting to push her away, hit her with great force unintentionally. She hit a tree, then she fell down and died. He kept calling her to wake up, but she showed no response or signs of life. Not wanting to touch her, he sat next to a crowbar and waited, hoping she would wake up, but she never did. Eventually, he left the scene and observed from a distance as the police arrived. Robert insisted he was not guilty. He claimed he acted in self-defense against Jennifer's aggression. He expressed that he had no intention to harm her, as he really liked her. The investigators questioning why he didn't call for help. They believe if she had received medical help sooner, she might have survived. Robert explained that he feared being arrested. Following his interrogation, he was charged with murder. His family quickly hired a prominent lawyer, Jack Littman, who immediately petitioned the judge for Robert's release. The lawyer argued that Robert was innocent and that his actions were self-defense. The lawyer Jack portrayed Jennifer as a slut who lured Robert into a trap and tried to rape him, and he was simply defending himself. Jack argued that Jennifer injured Roberts and she coincidentally died during his self-defense. This unusual defense strategy captured public attention. New York's media and information boards were filled with sensational headlines discussing the case. However, there were supporters of Jennifer as well. They viewed he as a decent, handsome, and successful. Robert was considered an intelligent and promising young man. He was a devout Irish Catholic and could not have deliberately committed such a heinous crime, as it would have destroyed his perfect life. Outwardly, he seems incapable of killing. Many people wondered why Robert, an attractive young man, would force a girl to have sex, since he was famous and had a lot of female attention. Robert's lawyer, Jack, tried his best to keep him from being held responsible for the murder. Jack even managed to get he featured on the cover of several magazines, such as New York Magazine. He appeared in a blue suit and red tie, resembling a fashion model rather than a dangerous criminal. Meanwhile, Robert actively smeared Jennifer's reputation, and this strategy was so effective that many people developed a biased view against his. Gradually, all media and the public sided with the defense. They believe that Jennifer is a woman with an evil personality. After meeting Robert, she went to Central Park to have sex with him and attacked him. However, a group of city volunteers specializing in crime prevention and many others strongly opposed it. They realized that Robert's lawyer was lying. They were furious with the lawyer. Besides, they also accused Robert of tarnishing Jennifer's reputation. Despite this, the public accepted the lawyer's lie, and Robert's supporters actively spread rumors that Jennifer was reckless and promiscuous. This made it possible for Robert to be released on bail. The lawyers then developed a more plausible version of incident, yet continued to defame Jennifer. They argued that Jennifer liked rough sex and accidentally died in the meantime, claiming the encounter began consensually and ended tragically by accident. This story gained unexpected support when Jennifer's father submitted her diary to the media. It was rumored to document her sexual relationships in detail. Later, the media has hyped it up as a sex diary, though it only described relationships with a few individuals, lacking any explicit or provocative content. Despite this, the diary entries were ruled inadmissible, which had already harmed Jennifer's reputation. The prosecutor's office had difficulty formulating a strategy and grasping the engine of this challenging case. Why did a boy from a wealthy family commit murder? A significant step in addressing this was analyzing Robert's past. Although only 19 years old, but he had committed over 3 burglaries, targeting wealthy homes in prestigious areas. His life was not as ideal as he portrayed. His mother not wealthy, she worked as a nurse in a private clinic and spent all her free time working to earn money. Without a source of income, Robert turned to crime and theft to maintain the image of a well-off young man and to support his drug addiction. He had been using drugs since he was 14 and had undergone several treatments, but none were successful. Robert struggled to graduate high school and later entered college, but he to be expelled due to substance issues and poor academic performance. He then attended Boston University, but faced similar problems. Many people knew he as an addict with a reputation for being dangerous. Jennifer had planned to break up with Roberts, and that might have been what led to the incident at the bar that night. One of Jennifer's friends reported seeing Roberts searching through her purse. He attempted to steal $40 and became angry when questioned by her. She was appalled at how low he had fallen. This occurred shortly before she was discovered dead in the park. The investigation confirmed that her expensive earrings had been stolen. True to the nature of someone with an addiction, he simply removed the jewelry after the murder and sold it to buy drugs. Nonetheless, there was a chance that the hearings might not consider his criminal past. A year after the murder, headlines about Jennifer's brutal murder in New York's Central Park were still in the newspapers. Finding 12 jurors who are not familiar with the case, are fair, and can render a correct verdict is a difficult task. They had to vet 486 people to find the required number of jurors. On the trial day, dozens of reporters were in the courtroom. Robert maintained his story about a genital attack and blamed Jennifer. He claiming he acted in self-defense and he just accidentally caused her death. However, experts have pointed out that Jennifer had marks on her neck, indicating that she had been in a violent and prolonged struggle. Numerous injuries indicated she fought against being strangled. The deep scratches on Robert's face were caused by her while fighting back. For a month, the case was highly contentious. Witnesses gave conflicting information, creating many doubts and questions, leading the jury to deliberate. Ultimately, they have fallen into a deadlock, and the possibility that Robert would escape punishment. On the 9th day, it was decided to annul the trial results and declare a mistrial. The prosecution's only hope was a plea deal. Robert was offered to plead guilty to manslaughter, and eventually, he accepted. On March 25, 1988, in court, Robert expressed remorse. He admitted guilt for a lesser crime and apologized to Jennifer's family and friends for the suffering he caused. Consequently, he received a lenient sentence of 15 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 5 years. Before the sentencing, Robert was released on bail, during which he held a farewell party. A girl at the party captured the event on a video camera. During the party, he got drunk, and he too confessed to the crime on camera, showing no remorse and even making jokes about the incident. Once in prison, Robert immediately became a troublemaker. He participated in assaults and repeatedly violated rules related to weapons and prohibited substances. As a result, his requests for parole were denied, and he served the entire 15-year sentence. Robert was released in 2003. Subsequently, Jennifer's family filed a civil lawsuit against Robert. They won the case, with the court ordering Robert to pay the family $25 million. However, it is unlikely they will receive this money because Robert lacks the funds. Robert remained silent about the incident that tragic night. However, in 2003, he spoke to the media for the first time. He seemed weighed down by guilt over killing a young student. He viewed this interview as a chance to unburden himself. He wished to speak out. He discussed the victim, Jennifer Levin, claiming he thought about her daily. The interview lasted 4 hours, with tension high throughout. Robert acknowledged that he could never make up for the pain he caused the Jennifer family. He realized that not only did he take their daughter away from her parents and friends, but he also created a web of lies. Despite this, he did not see himself as a monster because he felt remorse. Robert believed that if he were truly a monster, he would feel nothing. He admitted he was foolish and made the biggest mistake of his life. He recognized that stupidity often accompanied his actions. Although he was a criminal, but Robert did not seek forgiveness from the public because he believed it was impossible. However, he wanted to apologize and find a way to back up his words. For the past 15 years, Robert has been imprisoned, he believing this has atoned for his guilt. He admitted he was genuinely afraid, partly because he had to speak to the media. Nevertheless, he chose to speak because he felt it was his duty. After Robert was released from prison, he really wanted to make up for his mistakes. However, after missing out on major social changes during his incarceration, he had a hard time starting over. His lack of understanding about responsibility had contributed to the tragic death of Jennifer, a young woman. In an interview, he admitted that responsibility is now a key focus in his life. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Honey and Barry Sherman. The murder of Honey and Barry Sherman is one of the most baffling crimes in history. On a cold December morning, Canadian billionaire businessman Barry and his wife Honey were found dead in their mansion, hanging from a railing near their indoor pool. The shocking discovery led to an investigation that revealed unexpected twists and turns. Barry Sherman was born in 1942 in Toronto, Canada. His father ran a small business but passed away from heart failure when Barry was just 10 years old. From a young age, Barry demonstrated exceptional intelligence, setting him apart from his peers. In the early 1960s, he studied engineering at the University of Toronto. During the summer, he worked part-time as a truck driver, delivering drugs for the pharmaceutical company Empire, which was owned by his uncle, Louis Winter. Barry later earned his PhD and BA in astrophysics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in 1967. In his unfinished autobiography, Barry said that these early years were crucial in shaping his future. His uncle, Louis Winter, a pharmaceutical company owner, and his wife Beverly both died young, just 17 days apart, in 1965. Louis suffered from psychosis, while Beverly battled leukemia, leaving behind 4 young sons. Initially, Barry occasionally visited his young cousins, but eventually lost contact with them. At that time, Barry was only 22 years old, but he confidently declared to the real estate manager at the time that he wanted to become the head of the Empire Pharmaceutical Company. He offered $3,000 and a car. Barry demanded a response within 24 hours or he would withdraw his offer. The trustee rejected his bold proposal, but Barry was not deterred. 2 years after graduation, he made another attempt to gain control of the company, this time proposing a partnership with a formal offer of $450,000. The trustee considered selling the company, but wanted to ensure that Louis's 4 sons would be protected in the deal. However, Barry was only willing to put together a written agreement that would allow his cousins to work at Empire when they turned 21 and purchase up to a 5% stake when they turned 23, as long as he still owned the business. If he sold the company, the agreement would be void. Despite their concerns, the deal went ahead, but protections for Louis's sons were not included in the final agreement. Barry ultimately sold the company for nearly $2 million, and after gaining experience from this venture, Barry was ready to start his next venture, starting his own pharmaceutical company, Texas. He founded the company in 1974 as a conglomerate that would compete with global market leaders such as Pfizer and Bayer. The company produced generic drugs, which are essentially replicas of well-known medications. Barry portrayed himself as a champion for consumers, boldly suing major pharmaceutical companies to make medications affordable for patients in need. Barry married Honey in 1971. They met in 1970 when Honey was volunteering at a local hospital, raising funds for charities and participating in Toronto's Jewish community. Helping others was very important to her since she was born in an Austrian displaced persons camp, and her parents survived the Holocaust. Years later, Barry decided to help his cousins, Lewis's children, after discovering that they had struggled with drug problems as teenagers. After 16 years of separation, Barry reconnected with them, providing them with a car, a house, and financial support. However, Barry's wife, Honey, was not happy with this new relationship. She frequently questioned Barry about what his cousins asked for and how much money he gave them. This frustration caused her to scold Kerry Winter, causing him to leave. Why was Barry so generous to his cousins? Kerry started to wonder if there was a hidden motive behind Barry's help. One day, Kerry confronted Barry and directly asked how he acquired their father's business. Barry dodged the question, but Kerry persisted. He began searching through family archives and discovered an agreement that shocked him, making him believe that Barry had deceived their family. Barry had never mentioned it to him or to the other brothers. Kerry later called Barry to express his concerns, and Barry confirmed the truth of Kerry's findings. This revelation caused a lasting rift between them and Barry. Barry was actively involved in charity work alongside his wife, Honey. They donated over $50 million, including significant contributions to the Jewish community and the Toronto Hospital, as well as supplies to areas affected by disasters. His company employed around 11,000 people and operated in over 100 countries worldwide. The couple had 4 adult children and several grandchildren. In 2017, they decided to sell their mansion, which was over 1,100 square meters, for nearly $7 million Canadian dollars. They intended to build their dream home closer to downtown Toronto, but those plans never materialized. At 8:30 a.m. on December 15, 2017, a cleaning crew entered the couple's home and began cleaning the house before it was put on sale. Around 10 a.m., 2 real estate agents arrived at the house with potential buyers to inspect the property. They first inspected the main levels of the house and then went to the basement, where the swimming pool was located. A real estate agent entered the pool area first and saw the bodies of Barry, 75, and Honey, 70. After realizing they were dead, she quickly ordered the buyers to leave, telling them that the owner was supposed to be doing yoga. Before taking the potential clients upstairs to view the home, the employee asked the maid to check the basement and see what was going on. The maid went down into the basement, approached the couple, and found them cold. She returned a few minutes later and informed the employee of her findings. The employee then said goodbye to the clients and went downstairs to confirm that Barry and Honey were indeed dead before calling the police. When police paramedics arrived, they confirmed that the couple were dead. Barry and Honey had been dead for approximately 36 hours at the time of discovery. Barry was discovered sitting on the right side with his legs crossed and his glasses correctly positioned on his face. He had some neck wounds, but no other injuries were found on his body. Honey had a bruise on her face, and Barry was located near the garage door. On the other side of the garage, there was vodka, which they often kept there, and one of the room's windows was opened about 15 centimeters for ventilation because the room had recently been painted. Both Barry and Honey had leather straps tightly wrapped around their necks, which were attached to stainless steel pool railings installed about a meter above the floor. The cause of death for both was determined to be strangulation. Initially, the police suspected that the couple had chosen to end their lives, but there seemed to be no reason for such a tragic decision. They were wealthy, had a thriving business, and were in love. A family member mentioned that Barry had complained of fatigue, blaming it on long hours of work and poor nutrition. However, Barry had never shown any signs of depression, making it difficult to believe that he would take such drastic action. Honey had recently been treated for throat cancer and was battling severe arthritis, having had knee and hip replacements. Despite her health problems, she never complained, was sociable and friendly, always maintained a positive attitude, and showed no signs of end her own life tendencies. After a detailed examination of the crime scene, the police began to investigate the possibility that the husband killed Honey before taking his own life. They identified the victim as Honey based on injuries to her face. Both victims had marks on their wrists indicating their hands had been bound together. Autopsies found no traces of illegal substances or alcohol that could have contributed to their deaths. In Barry's basement, there is a sculpture made entirely from trash. The artist deliberately used discarded materials to create this piece, which depicts two human figures. After the bodies were discovered, some speculated that the killer may have been inspired by this sculpture, as the bodies were placed in similar positions. The day after the bodies were found, some unnamed police officers told the media that Barry had strangled his wife, Honey, before taking her life. This was never verified and was quickly dismissed by family members, who said it was untrue, especially given the close relationship between the couple. Within 72 hours of the incident, their 4 adult children hired prominent criminal defense attorney Brian Greenspan. He assembled a team to conduct an independent investigation, including detectives and an expert who performed a second autopsy on the victims. They believe that Barry and Honey were murdered. The couple had died just a few days before they were scheduled to leave for a vacation at their home in Palm Beach, Florida. Honey had organized a 4-week trip that was meant to begin on December 18th. Barry was meant to join Honey a week later on the 25th. Unlike Honey, he wasn't in a rush. Work took priority over a vacation in Florida. When examining the couple's position when they died, they were sitting on the floor, their backs to the pool, their jackets thrown back. The glasses on the bar appeared to have been adjusted by someone, raising questions, as did the Barry's crossed legs. It appeared that someone had assisted them in their final moments. Barry's family released a statement calling on the police to conduct a thorough and impartial investigation into the deaths and asking the media to stop speculating about the cause. During this time, a serial killer was also active in Toronto, diverting police resources to catch him. As a result, the investigation into Barry and Honey's case was not a priority. The couple's autopsies were performed by a rookie forensic expert who had never worked on such a complex case before and was unable to provide any conclusive answers. However, after Bruce McArthur was arrested, police began working on Barry's case and interviewed around 240 people. With such a large group, it seemed like the case would be solved quickly. Unfortunately, that was not to be. The latest known events before the couple's death were remarkable. On December 12, 2017, Honey was absent from a charity board meeting, which was unusual for her as she had never been absent from such meetings before. The following day, December 13th, Barry and Honey met at Apotex's headquarters to discuss plans for their new home. Barry often made work calls at night because he had trouble sleeping, which changed his working hours. However, on the evening of December 13th, he did not make a phone call, which was unusual for him. Barry was scheduled to appear at the Apotex office on December 14th, but he did not show up or notify anyone of his absence, which is highly unusual. Toronto police, who have been criticized by Barry's family for their previous handling of the case, have refused to make any public statements. Police have not been looking for a suspect because there was no evidence of a forced entry into the home or any signs of outsiders, prompting theories that people close to them were involved. An independent investigation revealed that Barry's cousins were suspects. They were unhappy that Barry had lied to them and left them without money. For 10 years, they had been involved in a lawsuit over a portion of Barry's pharmaceutical fortune. They argued that Barry had founded his pharmaceutical company at the expense of his father's company, Empire, and they demanded their share of Apotex. Barry denied all allegations and fought tooth and nail, insisting that his cousins return the millions of dollars he had given them. Finally, in the 1980s, Barry did everything he could to support them. On September 15, 2017, 3 months earlier, Barry and Honey were found dead, and an Ontario judge ruled in Barry's favor, dismissing the cousins' claims and describing their lawsuit as unrealistic and overly ambitious. On December 6, just a week before Barry was last seen alive, a judge ordered Barry's cousins to pay $300,000 in attorney fees. Barry was unhappy with the amount, as he was asking for nearly $1 million. After the ruling, Barry brought in his attorneys to appeal the decision. They filed their appeal the day after his funeral. Due to the ongoing conflict with the cousins, many began to suspect their involvement in the couple's murder. One of the cousins, Kerry Winter, even mentioned in an interview that he had fantasized about ambushing Barry at work and harming him. Kerry was not surprised by the tragedy that occurred. He believed that Barry had killed his wife, Honey, and then taken his own life. In several interviews, Kerry mentioned that years ago, Barry approached him with a disturbing request. Barry is said to have told Kerry that he wanted Kerry to do him a favor and kill his wife. Kerry responded in disbelief, "Are you serious, Barry?" Barry said, yes, he hated her. Kerry insisted that he would not commit such an act but mentioned that he might know people who could. However, when Kerry was about to help Barry out of gratitude for his past support, Barry suddenly changed his mind and rejected the idea. Barry's family later strongly denied Kerry's claims, asserting that Barry would never ask his cousin to do something so extreme, as he loved Honey very much and would never think of harming her. Kerry claimed that he had nothing to do with the murder. He admitted that he felt great contempt and hatred for Barry, because Barry hurt him and disrespected his father. Kerry had every reason to dislike Barry, but he had nothing to do with Barry's death. Kerry mentioned that on the day of the murder, he had been at work all day. In the evening, he attended a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, then returned home as usual, watched a movie, ate, and went to bed. The next morning, he went to work as usual. However, since he lived alone, no one could verify his statement. 3 years later, in November 2020, police announced that they had a suspect, but just 2 days later, they announced that there may be multiple suspects. There has been no further clarification since. A year later, in December 2021, police released surveillance footage near Barry's home. The videos showed a person wearing dark clothing walking on the sidewalk near Barry and Honey's home. Police observed that the person had an unusual gait, possibly due to walking in the snow. The time of the murder coincided with the time this stranger was seen walking toward the couple's home. The man in the footage was never identified because his face and identifying features were not visible. The only detail identified from the surveillance camera footage was his height, estimated to be around 170 to 180 centimeters. Police hoped that by sharing the video with the public, someone might recognize the man, but no one came forward to help police identify the suspect. According to police, Honey arrived home in her Lexus at around 8:30 p.m. on December 13th. She parked as usual and entered the kitchen through the laundry room door. The intruders may have entered the home. Honey then went into the bathroom, where she was either attacked or fled after the attack began. This would explain why her phone was found in the bathroom by a maid. Honey was beaten and strangled on the first floor before her body was moved to the basement. An independent medical examiner determined that Honey's facial injuries occurred as a result of being dragged down the stairs to the pool, but it was never determined which of the two staircases in the home was used. One theory is that the attacker encountered Honey and attacked her on the street, then used her keys to get into the house. This would explain why there were no signs of entry. Another possibility is that he entered through an open window or unlocked door. Barry left Apotex around 8:30 p.m. in his Mustang. After reaching home, he parked in the garage, which provided him access to the house through two doors. It's likely he used the door near the stairs, where he was attacked. This could clarify why his documents and gloves were discovered in the garage area. The killers placed the victims' bodies near the basement pool. They wrapped belts around their necks, draped jackets over their shoulders, and left glasses on the bar to make it look like to end one's own life. It was discovered that the leather belts used were taken from the victims' homes. This suggests that the criminals intended to fool the investigation into the fact that no outsiders were involved. And Barry was behind the setup. It was learned through investigation that Barry, despite keeping a tight rein on his wife's spending, but had generously given millions of dollars to his children. Although he was reluctant to spend money on himself or his wife, he was more than willing to financially support his children. Honey had the means to travel and shop. She could easily spend large amounts on home repairs and other essentials. However, she and her husband preferred not to spend much money. Before her death, Honey mentioned to relatives that her husband wanted to buy her an expensive gift, but she didn't know what it would be. Despite Barry's considerable wealth, he preferred to drive everyday cars. He owned a Mustang, and the couple never owned the luxury cars typically flaunted by billionaires. For his 50th birthday, Honey bought Barry a sports car and presented it to him in front of close family, but he was unhappy with the gift and insisted that she return it because he disliked extravagance. The Barry did not flaunt their wealth. Their home was modest for billionaires, and they were careful with their spending. They led a relatively simple lifestyle, often flying economy class. Honey enjoyed a few luxuries typical of the upper middle class, like beautiful jewelry, a Lexus SUV, and shopping trips in New York. In November 2016, she bought a valuable piece of land in the upscale Forest Hill neighborhood, which was registered in her name. They planned to demolish the existing house and a new one. The plans included a large brick and stone residence with an elevator and the outdoor pool that Barry promised her, complete with a retractable skylight and a separate pool. The building plans received approval on June 28, just under 6 months before the murder. Barry did not really want to move to a new home. He was happy with their current home but made the decision based on Honey's wishes. On November 27, 2017, just 2 weeks before the tragedy, their home was put up for sale and described as a modern architectural masterpiece. It is unclear why the Barry family chose to sell their home when construction on the new home had not even begun. In the final weeks of Honey's life, she was busy with her charity work while also overseeing the home project. In late November, she received the Senate Medal for 150th Anniversary Volunteer Service Award, presented by her close friend, Senator From. She was recognized as the best charity worker and fundraiser in Toronto. Barry supported Honey throughout their 46 years of marriage. The couple demonstrated a striking contrast. Honey was outgoing, cheerful, and social, while Barry preferred a more reserved and introverted approach, often uninterested in small talk. Although Honey did not have a formal job, she served as an exceptional ambassador for Apotex. Honey excelled at building connections with influential people through her charm and determination to assist others. In her final days, friends and family noted that Barry and Honey appeared happy and in good spirits, showing no signs of being threatened or in danger. Barry frequently filed lawsuits against competitors and the government. Over the course of his career, he initiated approximately 1,200 lawsuits, including 83 against Health Canada, using these actions as leverage. His substantial donations to various foundations helped him gain support from politicians. Barry was known as the most active defendant in Canada. Those close to him said that his love of litigation stemmed not from a desire for money, but from a need for validation and a determination to win at all costs. Another theory that may have something to do with the couple's deaths is Barry's questionable business practices. He was known to be mysterious and owed around $1 billion to various companies, which he never intended to repay. His investments outside of Apotex were large and obscure, including a failed casino venture, a money-losing gold mine, a bankrupt jewelry business, and an investment in a non-existent yacht. He also financed B-movies featuring gangsters and vampires and worked with people who were later convicted of fraud. Barry amassed a large fortune through unethical means. While some considered him generous and kind, many others criticized his character, claiming that he lacked positive qualities. Given his character, many people would have wanted to harm him. There were suspicions about his business partners at Apotex who may have had motives related to a business dispute, but no solid evidence has been presented. In the final months of his life, Barry suffered a setback. In January 2017, Apotex sued a former employee, accusing him of stealing drug formulas to start his own pharmaceutical company in Pakistan. A few months later, a key executive at Apotex was accused of espionage by its biggest competitor, an Israeli company, implying that a former female employee had leaked confidential information to her boyfriend at Apotex. In the weeks leading up to his death, Barry continued to work hard, always focused on his business. Barry suffered from insomnia and was constantly busy with calculations and planning. He even wanted to discuss business matters while on vacation. Barry was a man who trusted his instincts and was willing to take risks. He was a popular figure in society, and many people came to him for financial help. Police now believe that Barry's murders may have been related to his personality and lifestyle. He often made life difficult for others and was quick to sue anyone. The police suspect that the killer was likely an unknown person who either visited Barry's home or hired a hitman. Honey was not the intended target. She became an accidental victim because she encountered the criminal at the murder scene. After the murder, the unknown criminal remained in the house with the bodies for an extended period, indicating he was familiar with the family's daily routine and had ample time to carry out his actions without being disturbed. He meticulously cleaned up any evidence of his presence and positioned the bodies to resemble the unusual garbage sculpture found in the house. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau attended the funeral of the Sherman couple and posthumously awarded Barry one of the nation's highest civilian honors. Approximately 6,500 people attended the funeral. An independent investigation team, led by a lawyer and supported by the victims' families, offered a $35 million reward for information that could lead to the arrest of the perpetrator, but this effort was unsuccessful. The lawyers discovered that the police failed to thoroughly examine the crime scene. Notably, they found jewelry on the driveway near the house that did not belong to the victims. But the police overlooked it and may have missed other crucial evidence that could have been lost over time. Evidence may have been destroyed by real estate staff and buyers who inspected the house, as well as cleaning crews who were present at the time. The police received a total of 343 tips from the legal team, but none of them led to the identification of the criminal. The last tip came on July 2, 2019. For unknown reasons, the legal team did not provide any information for more than a year, possibly due to a lack of new leads. In February 2019, the murdered couple's home was returned to their family. The couple's children then filed a petition to demolish the house, saying it was heartbreaking to see the house in its current state and that no one would want to buy it. As a result, the house was demolished. After the house was demolished, the family aimed to clean up the area, fill in the pool, and put the land up for sale. It is unclear if it has been sold yet. Barry has faced numerous death threats, including from his competitors. Notably, Barry had no protection whatsoever. Every evening, he would enter the office and get into his car, making it easy for someone to attack him. To this day, the case remains unsolved, with only 2 investigators still working on it. They are looking at all potential suspects from the large list of defendants in related lawsuits and are also looking into the company's financial records and charity documents. However, some believe that influential figures in society are involved, which could mean the case will never be solved. Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Heidi Broussard. 33 years old Heidi Broussard worked as a waitress in a small restaurant in Buda, Texas, which has a population of around 7,000 people. She was also attending veterinary school, aspiring to become a veterinarian. Recently, she got engaged to her boyfriend, Shane Curry, after being together for 10 years. They met while working together and quickly fell in love. They has a 5-year-old son named Silas, who was born while they were still living in Louisiana. Heidi's best friend, Megan Firemuska, is also 33 years old and works as a wedding planner. The two met at a children's camp when they were 11 and have been best friends for 20 years. In early 2019, when Heidi announced she was pregnant with her second child, Megan shared that she was also expecting. Heidi was thrilled about their pregnancies and looked forward to spending time with Megan, sharing parenting experiences, and supporting each other. They began spending more time together, planning every moment of the pregnancy, bought baby clothes, cribs, and diapers, attended childbirth classes, and even went swimming together. Megan was present at the births of both of Heidi's children, including baby Margot in November 2019. They were so close that Heidi hoped their daughters would grow up to be best friends, just like them. At 7:30 a.m. on December 12, 2019, Heidi dropped off her 5-year-old son, Silas, at school. By 2 p.m., the school called her fiancé, Shane, to inform him that Heidi had not returned to pick up Silas, which was unusual since she was never late. Concerned, Shane quickly drove to the school, picked up Silas, and headed home. He expected that when he returned home, he would find Heidi and Margot at home. He thought maybe she had simply fallen asleep and forgotten to pick up Silas. However, when Shane arrived home, he was shocked to find no one in the house. He started to worry, thinking that Heidi might have taken Margot for a walk and lost track of time. He tried calling her, but she didn't answer. Then he considered that she might be with her best friend, Megan, who was about to give birth. Shane called Megan, but she said she hadn't seen Heidi that day, which was odd since they usually met daily for walks. As Shane searched the house for clues, he noticed that Heidi had left behind all of Margot's essentials, diapers, food, her wallet with money and cards, and the car keys. It suddenly hit him that something was seriously wrong. Heidi never went out with Margot without these items. Shane grew increasingly worried. Then, he called 911 around 7 p.m. to report Heidi and their newborn daughter's disappearance, Margot. The police arrived quickly and began searching for them. They examined the house and found no signs of a break-in or struggle. Everything was neatly organized. Initially, the officer suspected Shane because the husbands are often involved in such cases. However, Shane had an alibi. He had been at work all day and was cleared of suspicion. Despite this, some people still suspected him. During an interview, people scrutinized Shane's behavior, consider him a guilty person. Shane recounted that he last spoke to Heidi on the phone around 8:30 a.m. She told him she had taken Silas to school, and then, she with Margot attended a book fair. She bought several books she had been eager to read. She also purchased children's books to read to their son, Silas. She is passionate about reading books and had been building her own library at home. After their conversation, Shane returned to work, and Heidi did not contact him again. detectives started to thoroughly investigate the house and the nearby area. They found that Heidi's car was parked in the garage. According to Shane, she exclusively drove her own car and never used taxis. This indicated that she hadn't gone far and was likely still in the vicinity. Both she and Margot have been placed on the search list, and a major search is underway in the area. While checking the surrounding area, investigators discovered a surveillance camera at a neighbor's home. They asked the neighbor to provide video footage from that camera. Then began reviewing camera video footage and interviewing nearby residents. The videos show Heidi, Margot, and Silas arriving at school at 7:30 a.m. Later, she and Margot returned home. A while later, they left the house, getting into a silver car. The video quality was poor, making it impossible to identify the car's license plate or model. This was the last sighting of Heidi alive. A neighbor reported seeing she in their apartment complex that morning, carrying a small child and approaching a parked car. A woman exited the car and greeted her. Both women then got into the car with the child and drove away. The disappearances of Heidi and her daughter, Margot, were linked to a woman. The police officer began to identify this unknown woman. Shane mentioned that the silver car matched the description of his friend's vehicle. He was convinced the woman in the car was his friend Megan, as he believed Heidi would never get into a stranger's car. Megan had a key to their home, given to her for emergencies. Detectives reached out to Megan, but she denied any involvement in the disappearance. Megan also told the police that she had not seen Heidi that day and shared some other information. She suspected Shane was involved in the situation. Heidi had previously confided in her about experiencing physical violence from he. Heidi claimed that Shane drank heavily and was abusive. Although Heidi wanted to leave him multiple times, she discovered she was pregnant for the second time and decided to give him another chance. Shane proposed, and they started planning their wedding. For a while, their relationship seemed peaceful. However, it seems that Shane has abused Heidi again. Megan showed photos of Heidi with bruises, but many people were skeptical. Upon closer examination, one photo revealed a trace from an IV drip on her arm, while another showed a small bruise that likely came from everyday activities. These are not the same as signs of domestic violence. There is no proof that Shane attacked Heidi. Police records showed no calls to Heidi's home for help. Shane denied the allegations, asserting that he loved Heidi. They were preparing for marriage, and he maintained that there had never been any violence in their relationship. Investigators searched for additional CCTV cameras in the vicinity and discovered several nearby. They collected the footage and began analyzing it. The quality of the recordings was better than expected, allowing the detective to identify a car. It was clearly determined to be Megan's car. Shane identified her. It turns out that she met Heidi that day, although she had previously denied it. She was the last person to see Heidi and Margot before they went missing. Therefore, she became the main suspect in the case. Investigators kept an eye on Megan's home. They noticed her boyfriend, Christopher, leaving and decided to follow him, but he was just going to the store to buy baby formula. The detectives approached him and showed him a photo of baby Margot. He recognized Margot and he confirmed that Megan had referred to the child as her child. Margot is in the house with her. It is clear that she is involved in this incident. The police obtained a search warrant and returned to Megan's house in Houston. When they knocked on the door, Megan opened it, holding a baby monitor in her hand and looking very worried. Inside, a baby was sleeping in a crib. Megan claimed the infant was hers and insisted she had no involvement in the disappearance of Heidi and Margot, but no one believed her. Shane recognized his daughter, Margot, by her face and clothes. The Texas Rangers detectives noticed Megan's car outside. the same silver vehicle believed to have been used by Heidi when she left. As they approached the car, they noticed the stench of a decomposing body, a smell they were familiar with. Opening the trunk revealed a horrific discovery. Heidi's body was inside a large sports bag and in poor condition. Megan was immediately arrested, and DNA testing proved that she was involved in the incident. Margot was returned to her father, Shane. Shane couldn't believe that Megan, Heidi's best friend for over 20 years, could have killed her. They had a close and trusting relationship, rarely argued, and no one thought this would happen. After Heidi went missing, Megan called Shane daily to check on the investigation. Shane began to feel that Megan was overly fixated on Heidi, resenting the time Heidi spent with her husband and children without her. During the investigation, it became clear that Megan was actively involved in searching for Heidi. She researched Amber Alerts and the investigation online, searching for Heidi's name 162 times. An autopsy later revealed that Heidi had been strangled, leading the case to be classified as a homicide, and the investigation continued. Megan informed investigators that she had given birth at a birthing center in Woodland, north of Houston, on December 10th. Just days before Heidi's disappearance, and had brought the baby home the same day. However, when questioned, she could not recall the name of the center, making it difficult for investigators to verify her story. The police contacted all maternity hospitals in the state but found no record of a woman named Megan giving birth. It was discovered that she had not visited any medical facility and lied to her boyfriend, Christopher, about her weekly medical checkup. Investigators tracked the phone records of both Heidi and Megan, revealing that they had traveled together from Buda to Megan's house in Houston, where Heidi's body was found in Megan's car. The car had been parked near Christopher's house for an entire week, and Megan drove it daily, despite the overwhelming smell of decomposition from the body inside. How did Christopher, Megan's boyfriend, not notice the smell? He was later questioned by investigators. He explained that he and Megan had been together for about 2 years, but in March 2019, he grew tired of the relationship and decided to break up. He asked her to move out, but she refused, claiming she had nowhere else to go. Feeling sorry for her, he allowed her to stay, and they lived in separate rooms in his house with minimal communication. Christopher found it difficult to kick Megan out of the house, and when he learned that she was pregnant, he decided to give their relationship another chance. He touched her belly a few times during the pregnancy but didn't realize it was a false pregnancy. He admitted that he had never seen her belly when she was undressed, due to the tension in their relationship. But he noticed it was growing and assumed it was real. Whenever Megan had a doctor's appointment, Christopher was not there and she did not invite him. This made him feel comfortable because he did not want to go with her. He was also away during the birth and only learned that Megan had given birth to a daughter while walking on the beach. When he returned home and saw her holding a baby, Megan claimed the birth went smoothly and that she hadn't seen a doctor. Her family video called her and remarked that she looked happy with the baby. They had visited Megan a few days before the birth and thought she looked pregnant. She has a big belly. In reality, Megan had never been pregnant, she had been pretending the entire time. Megan faked her pregnancy, deceiving everyone, including her boyfriend Christopher. This was part of a troubling scheme to take Heidi's daughter, Margot. This plan was devised by her to keep her boyfriend. When Christopher learned the truth, he broke up with her and moved in with his mother for a while because he was being hounded by the press and couldn't live in peace. He was not charged with any crime, as police were confident he had no knowledge of Megan's intentions. He was only involved in the case as a witness. Megan grew up in a family of 9 siblings, and her youngest brother was only 9 years old. She always dreamed of having many children and a big family. But she cannot get pregnant. Her relationship with her boyfriend Christopher also quickly ended. Overwhelmed by despair, she developed a horrific plan. When she learned that Heidi was pregnant, she is extremely jealous of Heidi and dreams of being pregnant. She decided that Heidi's baby would be the solution to her problem. She tricked Heidi into getting into her car, then drove them far from home. Once there, she attacked and strangled Heidi, placing Heidi's body in the trunk before returning home. As the search for Heidi began, Megan pretends to be sad because his best friend is missing. She even contacted multiple local TV stations, urging them to cover the story, so that no one would think she was involved. Megan was later charged with kidnapping Heidi and Margot, as well as murder, and she faced the death penalty. It was revealed that Megan had a prior conviction for theft. The charges indicated that she had originally planned not only to kidnap Margot but also to murder Heidi to accomplish this. She realized that Heidi would not willingly give up her child and was prepared to commit murder to get what she wanted. According to Megan, Heidi's second pregnancy was unexpected, and at the time, her financial situation was challenging. Initially, she considered terminating the pregnancy. Megan asked her not to do this, and even asked she to give Megan's the baby, but no one took Megan's words seriously. They thought she was joking. This might have been when Megan devised her plan. Ultimately, Heidi decided against terminating the pregnancy, and she and Shane chose to keep the child. However, Shane feels confused and doesn't know how to manage life with two children. Shane suspected that someone else was involved in the case. For at that time, Heidi was bigger and stronger than Megan, and Megan wouldn't have been able to handle everything on her own. He thought someone must have assisted Megan with the murder. He also did not understand how Megan could have stuffed Heidi's body into a bag and put it in the trunk of the car by himself. Heidi's family also suspects that Megan had help, but they don't think it was Christopher, as he wanted to break up with her. They believe Megan may have manipulated him into staying because of the child, suggesting he became a victim of her deception. A witness who claimed to have seen someone else in the car with Megan and Heidi, but this person did not see their face. Megan was in the front passenger seat, Heidi was in the back, and a stranger was driving. However, Shane never confirmed this information. Megan told Heidi and Shane that she had given birth to a girl on December 8th, but she did not show the baby to anyone, not even Heidi. Megan also did not share pictures of her newborn daughter on social media and very secretive about it. It is rumored that she had a nightmare about someone kidnapping her child, which frightened her and she decided not to show the baby to anyone. Before she disappeared, Heidi shared her worries with Shane about Megan. She found it strange that Megan didn't invite her family, although she invited Megan to attend the birth twice. She wanted to be with Megan at this crucial moment, and she felt offended by Megan's choice to keep it private. Megan explained that she was superstitious and preferred not to share the moment with others. Additionally, Shane recalled another odd incident. When Heidi was discharged from the hospital after giving birth, Megan, who was supposedly 37 weeks pregnant, can't leave the baby and constantly asks to hold the baby in her arms. She was very concerned about the child, which made many people suspicious, but at that time no one seemed to notice. The reasons behind Megan leaving Heidi's body in the trunk of her car instead of hiding it elsewhere remain unclear. In court, Megan continued to insist that the child Margot was hers. During a psychiatric evaluation, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and post-traumatic stress disorder. However, she was ultimately deemed sane and competent to stand trial. Throughout the trial, the evidence overwhelmingly pointed to her guilt, indicating that she had carefully planned the murder over several months. Following her lawyer's advice, Megan agreed to a plea bargain with the prosecution in order to receive a lighter sentence. To avoid the death penalty, she gave up her right to appeal. Heidi's family agreed to the decision to avoid protracted legal battles. Megan Fire Muska was sentenced to 55 years in prison without the possibility of parole.